Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candace Marie. Thanks for joining me. Happy Friday. I hope you guys are doing well. We're going to be doing live readings on the channel this evening. So if you guys can see this, give me a thumbs up, like the stream, let other people know that we are live. I hope you guys are off to a great start with your weekend. I'm excited to do these readings. We have a number of people who are already in the queue, so we'll get right to it. But just as a reminder for you guys, if this is your first time, say hello in the chat. Let me know where you're tuning in from. There's a QR code right over here. If you scan that, it'll take you to my PayPal. We're doing readings by donation, so you can make a donation if you'd like for a reading. We're doing $55 for any question that you would like in regards to transits to your natal chart, or we can talk about how this up-and-coming new moon in Taurus is going to be impacting you. Equally, we're doing Sinistry for $70. If you have questions about how your astrology relates with another person, we can talk about compatibility. And in order for me to do this, I need some specific information from you. So I need to know your time, date, and location of birth, the AM and PM, and the city, state, or country. Please put that into the memo box if you make a donation on PayPal. Just want to remind you guys that also we have memberships on my channel. So if you like my content, you want to support me as a full-time content creator, you can go and check out my YouTube page. Join one of my memberships if you want to support me. Level 3 memberships comes with a reading once a month. We're here every Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, and we alternate between tarot and astrology readings. Your level 3 membership is going to come with a reading once a month, and we take our level 3 members first. So I'm excited to get into this. How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? I know we got a ton of people who are here, so let me kind of go through the list and say hello to everybody. Jessica's here. What's up, Jessica? Catherine Murray's probably going to watch later. What's up, Jordan? Amanda? Who else do we have? Shara, Emma, Rosary, Queen of Light Bulbs is here. Brandy's here. What's up, Gibson? And David is here. Yeah, we're in a different location right now, but we are still working. All right, so give you guys the rundown. So basically, we're going to take the level 3 members first. I've got Jessica, Catherine, Jordan, Shara, Emma, Rosary, Queen of Light Bulbs, and Brandy. And then we've got our other people who have donated for readings this evening: Rome, Lily, Amanda, Asia, am I pronouncing that correctly? Aja, Alyssa, and Silk. So we will let you guys know. Usually I'll call a couple names in advance so you know that your reading is coming up. Also, we're streaming live right now, I should say, on Friday, May the 3rd. So if you're not watching this on Friday night, if you're watching this on Saturday or Sunday, this is no longer live. Readings are closed. Sometimes we have people that see this and they get excited and they think we're still live. So if you are watching this live, you'll get a reading. If you watch this at a later date and you get a reading, we will refund you. I have to say that. We're still, Mercury's still in shadow. Anyway, I'll call your name basically if your reading is coming up. Please put your question in the memo box when you make the donation. I appreciate it. And we'll get into it. What's up, Darlene? Dorothy's here. Everybody says happy Friday. So we're going to start with Jessica, Catherine Murray, and Jordan. So you guys are going to be the first ones to get a reading. Let me pull up what I've got here so I can see what's going on. So Jessica says, cashing in if y'all got my questions from earlier. I like to change my question. What's happening in love? All right, so she's 2/5/1990. Pull up my handy dandy marker here. She's a Scorpio rising, sun in Aquarius, and her moon is in Gemini. Okay, so in her 7th house. So let's take a look at what's going on with love for you, Jessica. So basically, when I look at love, I look at 2 different spots in the chart. I look at what's going on within the 5th house, which is generally romance, dating, taking chances, getting to know people, and then the 7th house, which is going to be about relationships and partnerships. So there's got to be something going on within those 2. Obviously, as a Scorpio rising, you're ruled by Mars. So we want to see, where is Mars, what's going on with Mars right now, and then we also want to see what's happening in your 7th house. That ruler is Venus. So we got to see something going on between Mars and Venus, basically. The good news is Mars, which is your chart ruler, is getting ready to move into your Placidus 5th house. So that's going to be giving you opportunities to get out there and meet people. The 5th house is about going and having playtime. So when I think about Aries in the 5th house, this is stuff that's going to be active. You know, fifth house is places like bars, casinos, going out and meeting people where there is fun. So it's likely that you're going to be finding opportunities to go out and socialize and kind of meet new people. You'll see this over the next 6 weeks or so with Mars transiting through the fifth house, and we'll see like reactivations that are happening from recent eclipses. So that's going to be very active over like the next month and a half. Equally, Venus is now moving through the sign of Taurus. So we've got both Mars and Venus in the signs that they are associated with, which is good news for you and relationships. Now, recently there was a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, and so you'll hear for Scorpio risings like, oh, new opportunities for relationships, meeting people, traveling, right? Or some kind of growth in terms of what you create with other people. So that did not happen in your Placidus 7th house. Okay, so full disclosure, I'm not a whole sign reader. I'll do that for my my readings, for my predictions for the new and the full moon reports, and the horoscopes. But I like to use Placidus for my personal one-on-one readings. Anyway. So it's a little bit longer before we see Venus move into the 7th house and before we see like the Sun and Jupiter move into the 7th house. But I've got a couple dates in mind that may be interesting to pay attention to. One is going to be obviously after the new moon in Taurus, and then when we see Jupiter come into conjunction with your 7th house, which is going to be sometime in mid-May. Now it looks like Jupiter, which traditionally rules your whole sign 5th house, right, of romance, is moving into the 7th. It's going to sit along your descendant starting on May 13th, 2024. Now, you're going to see Venus and the Sun come into conjunction with, Jupiter as well. So that's going to be bringing you opportunities to have the sweetness of relationships coming in, while simultaneously your Mars transit in your 5th house is coming into conjunction with the North Node. This can bring opportunities for future relationships, connecting with people. It can be kind of hot, steamy. Things can happen very quickly. So my eye would be on pretty much any time after this up and coming new moon, but closer to, I would say, about the 13th of May until Venus comes into conjunction with Jupiter. And that's going to be happening closer to the 22nd of May. And then we will see a Venus-Jupiter conjunction taking place right around the time of the full moon in Sagittarius on the 22nd of May. So really like the 13th on is when you see opportunities here. Now, the other thing you want to think about in the background is that you do have Uranus that's going to be coming into conjunction with your descendant. So Uranus is kind of weird and wacky. Supposedly, it can create some disruptions, but I think for single Scorpio risings, this is an opportunity to kind of meet people who are different, unconventional. It can be surprising, the kind of people that kind of come into your life. And it's at a 27. So that does tell me that because Uranus rules your 3rd house of communication, short distance travel, it could also be meeting somebody locally or, when you're going on a road trip or even online on an app, that there is a possibility that you start communicating and connecting with somebody and there's plans that are being made to kind of meet. The other thing you want to think about is that Uranus will come up to your 7th house cusp and then it will retrograde. So you're not really going to see the full effects of like Uranus moving into your 7th house or sitting on your descendant until, more so like next year. So you will see that go back and forth over that degree. It looks like it's going to get close here in July and August. And then it's going to retrograde at 27 degrees. So when a planet sits on an angle, it's pretty significant. It does seem to kind of symbolize like, hey, something big is changing in this area of your life. That's a Gemini degree. So it can mean that there's back and forth with more than one person. It can also mean that there's a lot of excitement and communicating and getting to know people. And I would really watch basically what's setting up here, spring into the summertime. I do feel like relationships can be kind of reevaluated, especially around the time that Mars meets Uranus around mid-July, because that can represent either a ramping up or a this isn't really working and kind of like a cutting off. Other positives though, is that Jupiter is still going to be moving through your 7th house all year. So it's bringing you the gift of relationships and partnerships. Jupiter does rule your 2nd house, which deals with resources, stability, money. So it's great for clients if you have a client-based business. Other 7th house people can come into your life, another astrologer, a counselor, a therapist, a friend. But I definitely feel like you bridge on the Sagittarius rising kind of predictions, where one thing you're going to deal with this year is Saturn in your fourth house, kind of like, bearing down, saying, okay, I'm really focusing on the base of my life, stability, where I'm living, what kind of a life am I building? And you'll see Jupiter square that. So it can mean that you're really focused on, home and domestic things, or where you're living. And partners come into your life that are lively, and they're kind of, they're curious. Right? Jupiter in Gemini can be chatty, they can be adventuresome, they're really intelligent. And they may be trying to pull you out of your home. Or there can be a bit of like a reevaluating. Do I like where I'm living? Is it conducive to meeting people? Do you meet somebody who lives somewhere else? And is there a bit of a back and forth? These things are all possible. Now, your natal ruler of the seventh house is Venus. So while, Jupiter and Uranus just recently came into conjunction, it was trining your natal Venus. So when we see outer planets activate your seventh house lord, that's also an indication that love is on the way, right? So if you look at what's happened here recently in April, let's go back a little bit. That conjunction that was setting up around the third week of April was trining your Venus. So it's opening the door to bringing somebody in. Now your Venus and all those other planets in Capricorn, they are intercepted in your second house. So it can represent a blind spot, or a sense of like needing to reevaluate, like, okay, what are my values in relationships? Do I value myself enough? Am I making enough of an effort? Certainly Capricorn is about long-term goals, and you have Venus retrograde, Venus conjunct Mercury, which can be about changing your mind about relationships, who or what you do or do not invest in. And Saturn is there as well. But I see Jupiter as a very positive planet. I think the trines to your second house indicates that you're really investing in yourself. There's a sense of knowing your worth and valuing yourself more. And the more that you're kind of holding on to those values, and simultaneously expanding in how you communicate in relationships and telling people what you need, you may see some pretty dramatic and positive changes in relationships. I do think that you're going to see, with Jupiter stationing on your moon also, especially because it's at a 20 degrees, so it's about change. So much of what you're going to see is going to be themes about making big transformations in relationships and opening up emotionally, being vulnerable, and being open to communicate and talk about difference of living situation stuff. Especially right around August, when you see Mars meet with Jupiter on your moon, it can indicate that there is this relationship coming into your life, and it's really exciting, and it's asking you to grow and to change and to be vulnerable. And get out of past emotional conditioning, or possibly even consider relocating. So with all those things kind of considered, right, clearly this is going to be a big year where I do think relationships are definitely showing up. I would make the most of the Mars transit the next 6 weeks in your fifth house. Go places where you can have fun. Aries in the fifth house is great for going and meeting people who are doing athletic things. Go to sporting events, go places maybe where people are like betting on sports. Maybe you go to a boxing match or something like that, and you may potentially meet somebody that you didn't see coming. Anyway, I hope that's helpful for you, Jessica, and giving you some more insight in how to navigate these relationships. But she says, is it possible to meet someone now and get serious later? Yes, there's definitely going to be a reevaluation point in July though, okay? So just take that into consideration. And sometimes with like a Gemini degree on the descendant, you'll be seeing somebody and then somebody else comes into your life, right? And so there can be like this sense of shock and surprise and being like, I thought I wanted this, and then there's that. There's gonna be a sense of having options and choices. One thing to keep in mind is that, for you, the seventh house is other people, it's not you. So you'll see other people kind of filter in or filter out, and you can see people who also can be very different than what you're used to dating. So I really recommend just keeping an open mind in terms of whoever ultimately ends up coming in. I'm congratulating you on getting that job. That's really, really exciting. Anyway, good luck. I hope that's helpful. So let's see, who else do we have here? We've got Catherine. And then we'll do Jordan and Shara. What's up, Catherine? I'm sure you're watching this at a later date. Let's see if you asked a specific question. I know you asked some stuff and then it kind of popped off a little bit. Let's see. Hold on. I got to remove this for a second. I can't see the top message. Sorry. Question regarding. Okay, cool. I keep leaving messages. Can I cash in? So I'm going to talk to you about what you got going on right now, Catherine, so that way you can have an idea of what's happening. Sorry, your messages weren't popping up. Sometimes YouTube's a little screwy. So I've got Catherine here. She's a Leo rising. She's got Sun in Scorpio, and her moon is hanging out in Leo. And just a reminder, guys, last call is in 5 minutes. So if you guys want to get a reading, scan the QR code. You can get in the queue. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what's happening with this new moon. Okay, so on the 7th, you're going to have a new moon in Taurus. Now, for Scorpio suns, just in general, this new moon is ripe with the opportunity for relationships and partnerships. I just want to kind of put that out there. Support is what kind of comes to mind for a new moon for Scorpio suns. However, this new moon is going to be at 18 degrees and it's going to be in your 10th house. And so this is about your status in the world. This is about your reputation in the world. For people who are working, it's about career. If you're not career minded, it's just about what am I doing out there and how am I seen? How do people know me? Like, what is my mission? What am I working towards? So Taurus is about stability, resources, support, anything kind of connecting to physical changes, right? So the 10th house is what am I hoping to achieve? Like, what am I hoping to gain out in the world? Obviously for a Leo rising, you know, this is squaring the ascendant. So it's creating a bit of a T-square between your ascendant and your Sun and Neptune. So there can be this feeling of being like, wow, big changes are on the horizon. This is ruled by Venus, and Venus at the time is going to be conjunct the midheaven. So my advice to you with this new moon is to put out there into the cosmos, I'm setting intentions revolving around totally changing like my status, my life status. It can be who's coming in to help support me and get me to where I need to go. Because it's a new moon that's very close to Uranus, which is representative of your 7th house. Now for a Scorpio sun, it can be you're reevaluating relationships with people in the past. Who can I rely on? Who am I kind of cutting loose? And where is there some exciting things on the horizon? Now you happen to have your sun in the late degrees of Scorpio. So over the next like year and a half, you're going to see that Uranus is going to be opposing, going back and forth in opposition to your sun. Pretty significant because you're ruled by the sun. So when you see stuff squaring, trining, conjuncting your sun, it impacts you a little bit more than other charts. Uranus in opposition to the sun can represent, there is this sense of feeling a little uncomfortable with some kind of personal change. If we look at your chart natally, a mass majority of your planets are beneath the horizon. So this is a chart for somebody who's really focused on home and your living situation and the past and your family and all kinds of stuff. And so with all the planets, the outer planets moving to the top part of the chart, you know, from the 8th through the 10th house, there is this sense of being like, okay, I am getting out of the past, or I'm getting out of my home, or I'm getting out of my comfort zone, and I'm getting out into the open where I can be seen. So it can just be about being more public. It can be about, you know, making some big changes in terms of what you want your status to be. You know, am I single? Am I partnered? Have I not been working? Am I getting back into, you know, working again? Am I feeling more abundant? Because that's what Taurus is about. I like the fact that even though like the new moon, Uranus in opposition to your sun can feel like there's a bit of friction, that Jupiter is involved in this. And what it's basically saying is, you know, change is on the horizon. Jupiter rules your 8th house. That's a natural Scorpio energy. So it can represent that you're like, okay, my goal is to have more wealth, to have more growth, to have more expansion, more travel. And whatever changes are coming, likely they're going to be pretty positive. Now, down the road, 6 months from now, in the fall of 2024, we will see a full moon in Taurus. Let me show it to you. I talked about this in my new moon video, but basically like, this new moon is conjunct Uranus, which means we got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We have to be willing to create change. 6 months from now, when this becomes a full moon, well, guess what? That full moon, it's conjunct Uranus. So it's saying like change is inevitable. This will be conjunct Uranus within 1 degree. It's going to oppose your Neptune, which means you can't really hide from these changes. And it's going to create almost like a full moon effect in your chart. Exactly squaring your ascendant, your Neptune, your descendant, and it's in the 10th house. So some big conclusion or big completion is going to be happening here. One thing that I would say for you is that when this happens, the ruler is Venus, and Venus is going to be in your Placidus 5th house. So it does seem like Taking a chance may pay off. It does seem like it might be connected to a relationship. It is also possible, because this is your whole sign's 6th house, that it can be about completing something revolving around health, and maybe feeling like, okay, you know, maybe the changes are you're feeling better, your health is on the mend, and now you're kind of getting back out into the world. So just kind of keep that in mind, that the intention set with this new moon is going to have very big effects for you 6 months from now. The other thing that I would say is in terms of some of the other current transits that's kind of affecting your chart, Pluto is now retrograde, thank goddess. So it's moving out of like that opposition that's been building to your moon, where there's probably been some emotional tension. Maybe there has been some nerve issues going on. Maybe there's been some drama revolving around your home or your living situation. That's going to ease up a little bit with Pluto going retrograde. But as you get into like the next year or two, you will see Pluto start making that opposition to your moon. Perhaps you may start thinking about, okay, I need to make a change in my health or my habits. You know, maybe you're making some kind of shift with your living situation for health reasons, because it's out of 4. So that's kind of lingering in the background. Mars is also going to be coming into conjunction with your Saturn pretty soon. So there is this sense of being really honest with people about what you need physically, financially, you know, so this can be a theme where you're like, you know, seeking funds from somebody else. Maybe you're cashing out on something. Maybe there's a sense of telling people, hey, I need support, or I need you to, you know, cover this, or I need you to pay me back. And you're going to be feeling, as Mars kind of goes through, you know, Aries and starts meeting with the North Node, a little bit more optimistic about where the direction of your life is going. And I think, you know, when planets move into the 9th house, we either travel, or there's a sense of having appreciation for culture. Sometimes new teachers show up into our life. Things like that start kind of happening. So watch for that to be building over the next couple of weeks. I hope that's helpful for you. And yeah, I will add you, Paula. Just let me know what your question is. You're in the queue. So we've got Jordan, Shara, and Emma. All right, let's pull up Jordan. What's up, Jordan? Let's go see, what did Jordan ask? Posted in the comments earlier. When I come back, they're gone. Sorry, guys. Sometimes that happens. That's just the way the wheel turns. All right, so I'm cashing in. Gotcha, May 24th, 1998. I'd love to hear if there's anything going on with the charts in relation to career, education, or travel. The morning after the new moon, I'm flying to present my first academic conference. For context, I work in an academic library and currently in school for my master's in library science. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's see what she's got going on here. So she's a Scorpio rising with the sun in Gemini, moon in Taurus. How cool that the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that we just had in April was exactly on your moon. So the moon is the ruler of the 9th house, and some astrologers consider the moon to be kind of like fortunate. Vedic astrology focuses a lot on the moon. Anyway, moon deals with foreign travel, education, philosophy, things that you have to kind of do that like are connected to travel. So with Uranus being the ruler of your 4th house, it's liberating you and getting you out of your home. And then we've got Jupiter that's helping you get paid, or kind of really show what you've got in terms of how much you've invested into your education. And I think it's wonderful because Jupiter can be about like teaching. 7th house is about, you know, being kind of like public or seen for something. So that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that happened in April, it's going to be unfolding over like the next 12 years, basically. So you'll start to see some of this stuff even start to emerge within 6 months when we have a full moon. But basically, you know, we're going to see more of that. There's going to be more of that happening for you. Really exciting because I think a lot of it's going to be positively influencing your public reputation. It's going to help you afford to be able to travel and possibly even get paid more. So that's kind of why this is happening. When I think about like the new moon that we are having is going to be right along your Mercury. And it looks like it's going to be on your, let's see, there we go. It's going to be on the midpoint actually of Mercury and the moon. Okay, so the moon is emotional. It's about home. It's about your kind of reputation in the 7th house. Mercury can be about resources. It can be about research. It can be about funding. And it's also about being around groups. So when you have a new moon on this midpoint, I mean, I think it's potent for being like, hey, I want people to hear what I have to say, you know, and I want to get recognized for the work that I'm doing. And I want people to talk to me and blog about it, or, you know, ask me for my expertise. So it's good for that. But it's also good for relationships. And it can be good for, you know, building relationships with other people and having other people see you as somebody who's really solid and reliable and also valuable. You bring something to the table that's valuable. I kept talking about this full moon, but when it becomes a full moon, then it's going to be between your moon and your Mars point. So it may also bring people who see you, who want to partner with you and want to work with you. So I see that being why all of this is happening, but also as a Gemini, right? Gemini, Sun and Mars. Mars is your chart ruler. So something else that you're going to see that's going to be pretty sweet here is that Jupiter's ingress into Gemini. It's going to be a quick moving transit, okay, but you only get it every 12 years. Jupiter is meant to bring you expansion, and whether that's an expansion of your mind in Gemini or communication, short distance travel, I think it's going to be pretty sweet because it's going to hit your Mars, so it's going to positively impact you, and when it does, it looks like Venus is going to be nearby around the 24th, 25th of May. And then you're going to see Jupiter come into conjunction with your Sun. So that's going to be like extra sweet from the end of May to the beginning of June. So I think about like contacts and stuff that you're going to possibly be making. I don't know when you're going, but such a fortuitous time to be doing this, and also being able to possibly get more involved in like research stuff. That's usually the 8th house. So it might mean that you're connecting with other people that are saying, hey, this is what we're working on. You know, do you want to come work with us? This is what we're willing to pay, or we're willing to kind of fund this. So keep your ears open for that while you're kind of interacting with other people in this realm. And it's also pretty darn good for relationships as well. So I know you didn't ask, but it's very relationshipy as Jupiter is making that connection with Mars and the Sun. Venus will be nearby as well. So I'm wondering, like, when Mars hits Venus, if you're going to meet someone, and it can be some kind of working partnership, but it can be romantic as well. Okay, so I hope that that's helpful and giving you some insight there. So you're doing a little birthday trip. Awesome. So there's going to be lots of opportunity for that. All right, so let's see, what else do we have here? We've got Shara, and then Emma, and then Rosary. Just keeping up with the chat here. Yeah, Toddman, you can change your question. Just send it to me, or just right before I call your name, let me know. Everybody's talking about EGs. But I miss EGs, man. That's one of the things I miss from Tucson. All right, so let's pull up the next person. Let's see, did I plug her in? all the clips from vacation. There we go. Sorry guys, PayPal's gonna be a bit of a pain. Let's see, I gotta put in this code here. And just listen for your name. I'll definitely call your name. Don't worry, guys. Let's see. So it looks like Diana, Austin, Christine, Stephanie, Susan, Gabriella, and Sarah, you guys all got in. So if I just called your name, you got in. All right, back to my list here. All right, so we have Shara. Am I saying that correctly? Shara? All right, so let's pull up your question. Included it with the payment. Okay, let's pull that up here. She says, I recently decided to go back to college, but dropped out in order to take my astrological studies more seriously. Does astrology seem like a solid path for me? And if so, when should I consider pursuing it full time? I feel a pull towards it as a means to creatively help others heal themselves while healing myself in the process. Thank you for so much. Okay, so I've got you here April 17th, 88, 1 p.m., and that was in Germany. So you're a Leo rising with a sun in Aries, and your moon is in Taurus. All right. So here's how I play this, basically. I will tell you guys what I look for before I even look at your chart when it comes to people who seriously want to practice astrology. Number one, I can't tell anybody whether or not they can or they cannot. I do look for certain signatures in a chart. I look for a really strong 11th house presence. I look for a really strong Uranian presence. I look for something kind of connected to either the 9th house, the 11th house, like that kind of stuff, okay? And P.S., I use Placidus. I don't use whole sign. So just a heads up, if you're practicing astrology, it might be a little bit different than some of the stuff you've seen. Anyway, we look at your Mercury and your Sun in the 10th house. So this is entrepreneurial in its own right. There's a sense of wanting to make your mark in the world and wanting to do something that is your own, right? Aries is independent. So that's working in your favor. And Mercury's pretty close to your Sun, which is the ruler of your chart. So there can be a sense of like wanting to focus on prophecy or divination or picking up patterns and predictions and things like that. You do have Venus in your 11th house, so a love for things that can be kind of unusual or Uranian. You also have a Saturn, Uranus, Neptune conjunction. I'm born with the same conjunction. I've seen a lot of people from 1988 to 1990 who are practicing astrologers who have that conjunction. So the Saturn being like the builder, and it lays the foundation and like the cement for business, right? Capricorn, commitment. And then Uranus being astrology. I feel like these people are people who have come in and they're like, I want to have an astrology business. It's happened dozens of times that I've seen throughout my practice. It is in your 5th house, so it's something that belongs to you. So it's something personal. So it's like, this is something I would like to create. But it also belongs to your whole sign 6. So your service that you want to give other people. This trines your Jupiter and your moon. So having like the sun and Jupiter and moon in the 10th house is great for like being seen, basically. Perhaps recently this has been kind of coming up for you for a number of reasons. You know, maybe it's because you've been seeing, you know, that the Jupiter transit with Uranus in the 10th house is I want to expand into being an astrologer. You'll see that kind of unfold over time. Maybe it's also partially because there have been eclipses that have been conjunct your Sun and your Mercury, and it means that you're wanting to kind of reinvent yourself and you're wanting to put yourself out there in a brand new way. It makes sense that maybe recently with like the eclipse in the retrograde that you kind of went kind of backtracking on school and you were like, maybe I don't want to do this. I want to do something else and I want to learn something new. So I can see it in your chart. I do think that for you to have a pretty significant career change, that will come when you know, you have a pretty significant Mars transit. So just some food for thought, right? You know, I would pay attention to when planets are going through the 10th house because you're going to see, you know, Mars is going to be there. We're still going to have some eclipses in Aries, so you're kind of feeding off of that. And I also think that Pluto going in and out of Aquarius, even though it's not in your 7th house yet, which can be clients, by the way, it can basically be like, okay, I'm making big changes in terms of how I relate to other people, and it can be about you in preparation to start seeing clients. A transit that I would go and learn more about is, you know, Saturn getting ready to transit your North Node. So you're going to see Saturn get all the way up to about 19 degrees this year in the sign of Pisces. It's still in the 8th house, so maybe you're doing research. Maybe you're learning about the psychological connection with astrology. Maybe you're trying to figure out, how do I pay my taxes as somebody who's, you know, self-employed? There is a sense of having to kind of work through this, and there may be some hesitation with Saturn because Saturn can be like a boundary where you're like, okay, do I feel like I can charge people for readings, you know? Something that I would watch is, you know, next year, you're going to see Saturn come into conjunction with your North Node at 22 degrees. This is the degree that deals with business. This is a Capricorn degree. So I anticipate possibly like spring of 2025, it may be a time where you're like, I feel capable enough to be like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I'm comfortable. I can take clients. Pluto is moving, you know, back into Aquarius, so it could be big changes in terms of how you're relating to people. You're going to have your nodal return, which is big. I mean, you have that, you know, as you're getting into, you know, your mid to late 30s. And this is like that alignment with destiny, right? So 22 of Pisces is, I think, like a spiritual kind of business. You may also find with Saturn coming into conjunction with the North Node, a teacher arrives, somebody who is going to be like a proper astrology mentor or teacher of some kind. Maybe you enroll in a program where you're getting some kind of certification. That could happen as well. Certainly Saturn is the ruler of your 7th house. So somebody can be coming in that's like going to help you feel, more official. And then you'll have like a retrograde. So there's going to be, in the spring of 2025, a Mercury retrograde, a Venus retrograde in the 9th house. So as like a Leo rising, I think about this as being a time where it's like, okay, am I really committing to my practice, to what I believe in? Have I made the right decision with like not going to school? That can still be a time that's up for, I guess, determination, basically, if that makes sense. But, when you have your nodal return, that is that kind of hard realignment with your destiny. Also, when Saturn hits the North Node, doubly, so you're getting it at the same time. And Saturn does rule your 6th house of daily routine and work. So I think a lot of this is possibly going to be about, if I am going to do this and I'm dedicating the time, how much time, and how can I help people? What kind of astrology am I specializing in? And is it going to be something relating to health? You may have an interest in health astrology in particular, or dealing with people who have had ailments or kind of blockages because you have Saturn and Uranus in the 6th house, so that it's more health-minded. The other thing that I think about is that, Saturn's going to be back and forth, basically, in and out of Aries and Pisces. So if you follow whole sign astrology, Saturn going in and out of those degrees may represent this sense of having to learn more, I think, about marketing yourself. That might be something else that kind of comes up for you, and like how to kind of get into like the global market, because the 9th house can be seen as, like somebody who's getting a little bit more eyes on them. Anyway, I hope that answers your question and giving you some insight about that. I would really, really, really consider go and learn about your nodal return and your Saturn on the North Node transit, because those are going to be very big. And because Saturn and Neptune will go into Aries, you're within your 9th house, it's going to be about education and belief system. And that's going to start squaring all your Capricorn stuff. So we're going to see another Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And this is the first time that it's actually happened since around about the time that you were born. If Capricorn is long-standing beliefs and long-standing tradition, Aries is like, no, we're blazing a new path. So you might kind of have a different perspective in terms of how you want to navigate making some of these career changes, or there may be a sense of you like learning a new type of astrology that's going to change the direction of ultimately what you're doing. Just a recommendation, I would seriously look into doing some research into astrology schools or different people that you want to work with. You may find an author, because the 9th house can be authors, like an astrology teacher and somebody who writes books about astrology, who you decide to take their course. And it can be long distance. The 9th house can be, you go and do a retreat, or, maybe you register for the London School of Astrology or something, and you're taking those courses long distance. That may be a good way to be able to get the necessary kind of foundational background that you need, while simultaneously being able to, like adjust your schedule, because it seems like there's going to be something about working and going to school that's going to come up at the same time. Okay. I hope that's helpful for you. Thanks for getting a reading. All right, so who do we have next? We have got Emma, Rosary, and then Queen of Light Bulbs. I want to make sure we have the right Emma here. 1 second. Believe it was this one. What's up, Emma? Yeah, I got you, Amanda. All right, so let's see. Emma says, cashing in. So she's March 1876. What is this new moon highlighting for me, and highlighting for me to be conscious and work with? Good question. Let's take a look. She just signed up for a long distance class. Love it. Maria says, welcome to Florida. We're Floridians now, at least for a month. All right, so let's see what this new moon has in store for Emma. So we've got you here having the new moon in your 5th house. Pretty sweet place to have a new moon. Well, I'm pretty good. Thank you for asking. I hope you're doing well. So a couple things that kind of come to mind for me is obviously being a Capricorn rising, you know, having a new moon that's in the same element, so it's an earth element, is going to play very nicely with your ascendant. Okay, so what is the Capricorn ascendant? They're like, what is my responsibility? How is this aligning with my goals? Am I getting something done, right? So to have the 5th house new moon, which is playful, it's creative, it's romantic, right? And it's ruled by Venus, which is very close by. Trining your ascendant is saying part of your job is to find things that you can enjoy. It's about finding pleasure. So 5th house can be speculative, things like investments. It can also be about dating or children or, you know, creative energy. So I would say this is a wonderful new moon, especially with some of the aspects going on. It's sextile in Saturn right on your IC. It could be about doing work from home. It could be about doing a hobby at home. It could be about decorating or something involving Taurus, which can be art, food, you know, things that bring some kind of pleasure. The only thing that I would say to kind of keep in mind is that Uranus is in the mix. So there is a sense of being like, how can I be creative differently? How can I have fun differently? Uranus rules your 3rd house, so it can be about writing, communication, posting, blogging, new talents that are emerging, you know, within like that realm. And it's also about making some changes to how you communicate, or a change, you know, in the way that you look at, well, what do I want to invest my time in? Because it's a Saturn-based energy. Whole sign, yeah, you know, 2nd house is money, 5th house is fun. So there can be a sense of being like, okay, is it about saying to myself, am I, you know, have I worked hard? Do I deserve to have a little bit more fun? What am I willing to kind of invest into, you know, having some, you know, new creative endeavor or hobby? How much money do I want to spend on, you know, paints and you know, fun time? You know, I think it's also about doing things that are more Taurus related. So it can be things that are going to bring you pleasure, but also help you kind of connect to the element of earth. So it might mean that you take up with a cooking class, or you decide that you want to spend a little bit more money gardening, or that you want to try your hand at like making perfume or something like that. So there is some kind of reassessing kind of like cost involvement. But as I've said to other people, we will see this turn into a full moon that's going to be conjunct Uranus as well. And when that happens, the moon is the ruler of your 7th house. So that's really going to be about, okay, you know, 6 months from now, do I have a different relationship kind of going on? What's the exciting kind of change when it comes to like my love life and how I'm opening up to romance and like learning how to play a little bit. So for you, it's pretty positive. I mean, you know, it's interesting that it's very close to your South Node, especially Venus is very close to your South Node. So it can be about getting in touch with the inner child. It can be about the yummy karma that comes from the South Node and kind of leaning into, oh, I used to love, you know, doing this thing, or I used to do this when I was a kid. Like, why did I stop doing this? You know, and then you kind of get back into it. So it's more creative more than anything else. And I would say that, you know, with Jupiter being nearby, it can surprise you that there are some hidden talents and things that start emerging, and you're like, oh, I never knew that I could like draw or dance or paint, or, you know, with this, I would start, honestly, I would take a cooking class. I would go to a comedy club. I would do things that are going to be like fun and uplifting and kind of out of your usual kind of hangout or comfort zone. That's how I would use that, and know that so many of the aspects are incredibly positive when it comes to your chart. I'm not really seeing anything kind of negative other than doing things different, right? So I hope that's helpful for you, Emma. I hope it brings you some romance there, because that's a fun place to have a new moon. All right, so we have Rosary, Queen of Light Bulbs, and then Brandy. So let's pull up Rosary. Let's see, I know I had her in here. Let's see, where did I put her? She says, I would love some romance. Well, ask and you shall receive. Where is your chart? I know I had you in here. Let me plug you back in. let's see. And that was, there we go. There we go. Okay, sorry for the delay. Your chart went missing on me. Okay, 11:50 a.m. and you're currently in Canada. All right, so I've got you here, Gemini rising, sun in Pisces, and your moon is in Virgo. She says, any insights on my work and love? Lots of delays at work, which is stressing me, and dating long distance for the first time. I have some uncertainties. Well, I appreciate your support. Thank you. Okay. So let's take a look. So she's got questions about what's happening with work because there's some delays. That's Saturn stuff. And then love. Well, so this is interesting. So Neptune just recently hit 29 degrees of Pisces. And that's a critical degree. So anytime we see anything at 29, it's kind of like a tipping point. And Neptune can create confusion. It can create vague situations. There can be uncertainty and not seeing clearly, or being like hopelessly and gloriously like optimistic. So being that it's in your 10th house of career, it feels like there is a critical turning point going on at work. And it's squaring your ascendant, which can be about how you communicate, how you perceive yourself as a Gemini rising. And it's squaring your descendant at 29 degrees of Sag, creating some pressure revolving around relationships and changes, especially when it comes to, you know, like foreigners, Sagittarius. So it's kind of like, where are these things going? I'll say this about work. You know, Saturn has yet to move into your Placidus 10th house. I'm not saying you're not going to see something happen sooner. Certainly, you know, we're going to be seeing Mars meet with the North Node in your 10th house. You're going to be also seeing that, you know, there is still this building from the solar eclipse that we had in Aries. You know, solar eclipse in a retrograde means it's like, okay, which direction are things kind of going in? You know, you want to listen to the Cancer rising horoscope to get more insight on that. Many Gemini risings are telling me they're frustrated with making decisions at work, or they're feeling like there's blocks or setbacks. And so that I do see that with Saturn kind of, you know, belonging to that house. But until Saturn fully moves into Pisces, which will be next year, you'll see like in the spring of 2025, you know, a Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde, Saturn's going to move there. There's eclipses also that are going to be, you know, coming in through Pisces mid-September 2024, and then spring of 2025. That's when you're really starting to kind of work through some of the confusion at work. For the time being though, Mars being there, coming into conjunction with Mercury, which is your chart ruler, is like a short but sweet transit that can help you feeling like you're making decisions or you're more assertive. That's pretty much setting up like around about the 13th of May, and you're going to feel that until Mars starts to separate from the North Node around the 22nd. So there can be this feeling of like, okay, you know, let's get the show on the road, let's get something going. Relationship-wise, you know, Jupiter rules your 7th house. Obviously, you've got the North Node there, Uranus and Neptune, so your relationship situation is always like a little bit like, what am I doing? But I do think that when you see a pretty significant Jupiter transit, something can happen. And so it's interesting because, you know, planets are coming into conjunction with Jupiter at the end of May. The sun's going to conjunct Jupiter. Venus is going to conjunct Jupiter. There's going to be all these things kind of happening, technically going into your 12th house. So it may feel as if you're either doubting, or there's some sense of uncertainty or not getting clarity. There can also be a sense of being like, okay, if I'm not feeling it, do I let something go? You know, the 12th house is foreigners though. So it can be about connecting with somebody in a foreign land and kind of feeling it out. Now, I will tell you, if this were me, I'd be paying attention to the full moon that's going to be in Sagittarius. I think that's going to give you some insight into relationships as to whether or not you proceed forward. And this will be around the 23rd of May. I say this because it's Sagittarius, so for Gemini rising, it's your relationships. But primarily because Jupiter and Venus will be in the 12th house at 29 degrees. So I'm kind of feeling like right around the end of this month, you're going to be like, okay, do I keep this going? You know, is this going to work for me or not? And then secondly, another time that you're going to want to watch is going to be when you have the full moon that's going to be in Capricorn. There will actually be two of them, but this one's going to be pretty much conjunct, almost bang on your descendant. This will be around June 21st. Now there will be two Capricorn full moons, so we'll have a blue moon, but this is the one you want to watch because when it's exactly along your descendant, I think, you know, we're really looking at Saturn and what's happening with Saturn. Well, Saturn's at a 19. It's like, well, do I see this relationship kind of going the distance? Is it something that I can commit to? Is it going to work? you're going to have to see. A lot of it depends on their astrology, but I will tell you that a Jupiter transit will bring lots of opportunity for relationships. And one thing that I see next year is that Jupiter is going to go into Cancer and it'll cross your ascendant, and it's still squaring Saturn and Neptune. So there is this sense possibly in summer of 2025 that's like, okay, how are relationships growing? How am I finding myself closer with another person and changing my status? And something about possibly where you're living, because Jupiter will be in Cancer, you know, whether or not you feel like you're committed to somebody in a serious way, and how, you know, you might be talking about domestic things or changes in regards to your career, and whether or not it's worth making those changes for the right person. So both of these stories will continue into next year, I guess is what I'm getting at. Yeah, you'll see a Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius at the end of this year, but for right now, I would say don't lose sight of what's most important. And actually what's most important is your career right now. Relationship stuff is still going to kind of develop, but I feel like be really cautious while Neptune is square your descendant, because there can be a sense of sometimes hoping and dreaming something is going to, you know, work out, or it looks like it's best case scenario, or, you know, what you've dreamed of, but we don't always see things so clearly when we have Neptune squares. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful in giving you some insight. And, you know, in the background, okay, I think you'll be talking more right around beginning of August, you know, with that Mercury retrograde over your Jupiter. So how is this going to work? What are we doing here? You know, who's going to move? Where am I living? Where are you living? You know, is it possible for us to bridge the gaps in the distance so we can actually talk about being together? So if you don't bail at the end of this month, that's going to be the next time that you're going to be kind of talking about this stuff. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful for you. We've got Queen of Light Bulbs and then Brandy and Paula. Thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. I do. We always have a lot of people when we do astrology, so you guys are awesome for waiting. Okay, so let's pull up Queen of Light Bulbs. Here we go. And let's find her question. There we go. Possibly unnecessary amendum to post-eclipse reporting. A friend angrily eclipsed himself from my life on the day of the Libra lunar eclipse, along with a one-time work windfall, unrelated. Okay, well, that's the kind of stuff that happens with eclipses, fortunately, unfortunately. So let's see, did you have a specific question? Let me see if I can find your earlier comments here. Oh, you sent it via PayPal. Okay. No worries. Let me see if I can find it. Was it under a different name? Oh, okay. I see it. Okay. All right. So let me read this here. All right, so the recent lunar eclipse conjunct my natal moon, opposite progressed, and solar return vertex, solar eclipse opposite my natal Pluto. You said the solar eclipse taking place in my natal 8th, and the eclipse on Jupiter in the 2nd house was a good sign for finances, but it was also conjunct Saturn. I'm not certain the solar eclipse was in my 8th or 9th because it was intercepted at 19 degrees. Can you clarify on those points? The eclipse is intercepted in the 8th and the 9th house, co-present with Saturn and Jupiter in the 2nd with the lunar eclipse. Oops. Come on, give me the rest of the question. Okay, and my sun is ruled by the moon squaring Mars. The rule of the solar eclipse, is that bringing additional influence? What does it mean the eclipse happens on the progressive vertex? What about Pluto polarity point? Okay, so let's go and look at the eclipse, and then we'll go back and forth, and we'll talk about what your specific questions are. So let's see. So if it was intercepted, you're talking about the Libra eclipse. So that was right here. Okay. So she's referencing, just so you guys know, she's a Leo rising. Sun is in Cancer and the moon is in Aries. So she's talking about the March 25th, 2024 eclipse. There you go. Thank you. So first of all, let's just talk about the interception, because that is important. So my interpretation of interceptions are basically saying blind spots, something we don't see coming. Okay, so in your 2nd house, when we think about the 2nd house, it's values, resources, what we can rely on, what we possess, what's ours, right? What we invest in. So it can be money. In your case, it can be relationships, right? So you've got exalted Saturn, so that's working in your favor, but Saturn still is Saturn, so it does represent karma, challenges, trials, issues in regards to limitations, and then Libras with other people. So dealing with whether or not you hold on to other people or you let them go. Dealing with whether or not finances are being held onto or if you're letting it go. It was a South Node eclipse, so there was something that was getting flushed out. Now, interceptions in the second house means that there may be something changing with finances, or in your case, relationships that you didn't see coming. I think the fact that it was also conjunct Jupiter means that it was like being set free. And it was something that was possibly being set free because, it was going to be for your overall happiness, right? Jupiter rules your 5th house. Jupiter also is the 8th house of transformations. Obviously, it also opposed your moon, so it was also going to be things you didn't see coming, or it was going to be some kind of clearing that needed to happen on an emotional level. Moon is women, so your relationship to other women and like whether or not, they got kind of catty or they got kind of nasty. But it's obvious to me that because Jupiter was involved, I think it's a positive thing. Now, when we look at the ruler, right? Ruler is Venus, and Venus was conjunct Saturn in your 8th house. So relationship challenges, especially in terms of whether or not people are giving you what you need. So, it could have been like communication that blindsided you, that you didn't see coming. Venus could have been a woman. Saturn was people at work. But this does belong to your whole sign 8th house, which does represent not just karma, but some kind of loss and like having to give something up, right? Pluto polarity point, or I guess in theory, it's the other eclipse that we had last year was on your Pluto. You still got another eclipse that's going to be coming, I think, spring of next year, that's going to be in Aries, that's going to be still, conjunct your moon and making oppositions. Progress charts and stuff, I mean, I will compare progress charts to the natal, and I will also compare the return chart. So if you see something happening on a vertex point, especially if it correlates with your natal, it's basically saying like there can be some relationship issues with Saturn kind of coming up that was like fated. So I don't know if that answers your question. Let me go back to this again, because there was like a lot of information in it. Hold on. Where is it? There we go. So it was conjunct your natal moon, opposite, and progressed in solar return vertex. So still relational issues. So it was still in the Aries Libra axis. So it's about you and other people. So it played out exactly how it's supposed to play out. Opposite your natal, solar eclipse opposite your natal Pluto. Oh, here we go. Oh, yes, I took it. Emotional inventory after it happened. It was a horrible communication. The issue was a big theme of the issue at hand with a friend. I mean, the other thing is this, the North Node is coming into conjunction with your moon. So this is not over yet, okay? That's the thing with eclipses. When we see like the nodes hit those eclipse points, you'll see more of this. So watch. When you see Mars come into conjunction with this point, 5 degrees, starting on the 7th, Mars is on your moon. So that there is this feeling of, okay, emotional pressure, tension, dealing with maybe the pain or the hurt of that kind of separation, because it's not just on your moon, it's opposing Saturn and Jupiter. So you're like, oh, how could they do me like that? Or why couldn't they just communicate efficiently? Or like, why would the relationship or the friendship blow up? Or like, why would the financial situation blow up? Or why would they get rid of me? Like, did they not value what I brought to the table at work? That stuff's going to come up. And then you're going to see down the road later this year, the South Node is going to hit 5 degrees. Okay, so when that's happening in September, you've got the South Node that is hitting your Saturn and Jupiter conjunction, and the North Node's hitting your moon. So you'll see another wave of this. Basically, my interpretation of this is that you're going to see some of these changes as a positive thing that was inspiring you to be more assertive. That North Node on your moon, get ready, because the North Node magnifies stuff. And so because the moon is the 12th house, it could be frustration, anger, feeling rejected, but it can be about rebuilding yourself emotionally. It can be about honing in on your intuition. It can be about embracing change and being more raw and vulnerable with the moon in the 8th house. And what you're learning about changes as well. What's interesting is when the North Node hits your moon, you're going to have Venus coming into conjunction with your Pluto. So it might mean that you're communicating in a much more passionate way. It may mean that you're looking at relationships differently. It may mean that you're like really owning, you know, some of your ways of, you know, communicating and being less Libra-like, which is, okay, you know, what do you need? How can I help you? Like diplomatic and like understanding, like a mediator. And that moon is going to kick in and it's going to be like, no, this bothers me. You know, I'm not going to kind of take this kind of communication with people again. And then your solar return chart and your progressed ascendant are both Libra risings, Aries vertex, both of those. Yeah. So when you see like, when you see something lining up where, let's say you have a solar return chart that's very similar to your natal, or if you have a solar return chart that looks like you're progressed, it's just doubling down and basically saying, this is the theme for the year. So it's bringing up the same stuff. And when you're seeing, in my opinion, like vertex stuff that's like squaring angles and like doing other things, especially in the cardinal signs, you want to watch when planets are moving through those degrees. So when Mars goes into Cancer later this year, right? That's going to be a time that you're going to see it. Obviously, Mars will go into Leo, it'll retrograde back into Cancer. But when it's within those degrees, it's going to trigger that eclipse. So yeah, literally, as I'm saying it, I look at the screen, here's Mars. And you're having your Mars return. So really, I kind of feel inclined to tell you, like, you're playing with home field advantage. With the North Node on your moon, it's saying, like, really dig deep into those emotions, those intense emotions, and be raw about it. You're going to have your Mars return. So it's also going to be about taking action and being more active when it comes to friendships. Maybe it's bringing new friendships into your life. And then at the same time, the South Node is hitting your Jupiter and your Saturn. Saturn is karma, but Jupiter is there. So maybe you're going to kind of look at relationships differently. And there's a sense of you kind of having more of a ability to kind of cut people loose if you feel like you're like, okay, this is not a solid friendship. I don't feel supported by this person. I have found South Node hitting Saturn can be a little dicey personally, but you know, you do have an exalted Saturn, so it's a little different. Maybe, you know, with Venus being there and the South Node, it means that there is something coming back to you. So people can come back to you to try to kind of make amends. Money can come back to you. There can be support that's coming in. So it is possible that you're doing like lots of like financial manifestation with that moon in the 8th house and really knowing your worth and not accepting any less. Yeah, I have moon in Aries too. And like 6 months ago when the North Node hit my moon, I was like, what is going on? I would go back and look at what happened like 18-ish, 19 years ago, the last time the North Node hit your moon. I would go and see what was taking place because I do think that there was going to be something significant. There's other things at play too, like Pluto on your South Node, you know, and it's in your 6th house, ends of relationships with coworkers, changing of jobs, you know, health stuff that can come up. Uranus, which is on your midheaven, squaring your ascendant and also your Venus, where you're like, you know what, I need to be different out in the world, and it's going to create some relational issues. But it's meant to put you on the path of a new status, work-wise, but also how people see you out in the world. So obviously, when you're becoming more authentic through that transit, it's going to kind of ruffle a few feathers, you know? Anyway, I hope that's helpful. Definitely the eclipses are all over your chart. Go look at the eclipse that's going to be happening next spring. Because it's going to be pretty close to your moon. Where is it? Is it? Oh no, it's not even. It's next spring. Okay, so it's going to be within 3 degrees. This one. Okay, that's going to be one you're going to want to watch because there's a Venus retrograde there and a Mercury retrograde there. So you want to get really comfortable with that 8th house moon and learn how to work with it. Anyway, I hope that that's helpful for you. Yeah, all of the eclipses are bringing up your natal moon opposed Jupiter and Saturn. It's like, how much do you give to other people? And like, they're just kind of taking from you. And then it creates some of those unhealthy feelings of like, how could they do me like that? You know, moon in the 8th house. And learning not to like harbor those emotions or those feelings, learning to kind of let them go and not give too much away, right? Anyway, I hope that's helpful. Good luck. I know how you feel. The eclipses have been hitting all my stuff too. My ascendant, my moon, I'm like over it. All right, so we've got Brandy and then Paula. And then I'll give you guys a list of everybody else who is in the queue. I appreciate your patience. So let's pull up Brandy. Let's see. Make sure I've got the right one here. There we go. All right. Okay, so Brandy says, I want to cash in. She's January 22nd, 86. And she says, just wanted to know what the intentions would be best for me to focus during this new moon. I'm still trying to figure out my work as a healer, prepping to leave nursing. So healer training is the focus. All right, you got it. You're welcome, Queen of Light Bulbs. All right, so let's take a look at this new moon that she's going to be having in Taurus. All right, so that new moon is in your Placidus 10th house of business. So wonderful for setting intentions revolving around making moves with your professional life. So that's how you want to use it. It does bridge into your 11th house, right? So it is this feeling of what are my goals when it comes to career? How am I growing my career, my status, and my reputation? By whom I'm networking with and connecting with? What groups of people? What affiliations? Are you joining other organizations? Are you making friends with people who are in a similar industry? What are your goals in terms of where you're hoping to go? If you've heard the other readings, I've said in 6 months' time, this will become a full moon in Taurus conjunct Uranus. Now that one will be in your 11th house. So it can be some kind of fulfillment pertaining to your career stuff, and also who you're working with. So I think a lot of this is going to be about networking, joining groups or affiliations of like-minded healers. The other thing that I like is that, this is a new moon that has Venus pretty close to your North Node. So it's about putting your all into the work that you love doing, right? Point blank. It's also going to be about really focusing on your long-term goals and what you're investing into this. Now, this can be time, this can be energy, this can be resources, this can be money, but it's going to be that basically. You just had a retrograde through your 10th house. You had an eclipse in your 10th house. So there has been this sense of being like, work needs to change. Something is shifting. That retrograde was kind of bridging from your 9th into your 10th. So it could have been about a change in direction with your belief about your career or education. Something else that kind of like interests me is that you are seeing that this is going to be it's a wide trine, but it's a trine to your 7th house. And that tells me that it's about changing something about the relationship to other people. So I don't know if this is like seeing, healing, and helping people in another way. I don't know if this is about making friends with other people. I mean, you're in a season of change, girl. You don't need me to tell you. Pluto's on your descendant. Pluto's conjunct your sun. It's going to conjunct your Venus. So it's like this year and next year, everything is changing in a very, very, very big way. Pluto brings profound shifts. And this can be about how you're helping heal others. And it can be about taking something that you're creating, your business, and making changes in terms of how you're offering services and kind of like the marketplace. So I really think that's what this is going to be about. Something else that is worth mentioning is like, you're ruled by the moon. So when you have a new moon or you have a full moon, it's definitely making you very personally involved. So if this were me, if you want to really do this work seriously, I would go and find other like-minded people, or maybe join some groups, or maybe you're going to try to find some like group healing events, or maybe some like market type stuff, or maybe there's like a community center that's going to be doing this work that you can become kind of involved with. So you feel like you have community, because I think that that's going to be the way to be able to manifest some of the things that you're hoping to bring in. Obviously, it's at 18 degrees, so it is almost in opposition to your Mars, and Mars is, the ruler of your 5th house. So it's not just about your business, what you do, your work, what you create, your talent. It's also saying it's taking that and it's putting it in like the space of collaborating with others. So you really want to find other people who are probably also self-employed, or people who are also, finding ways to be able to refer to one another or work together. And it may feel frustrating because you're like, okay, it's not just about me, it's about other people. And I think that's going to be kind of like the challenge here, basically, over the next 6 months. When it becomes a full moon, it'll oppose your Mars as well. So it's saying that you're able to take your talents and combine them with others. So the way to be able to make this really help you break free from the work that you've been doing is having that kind of support from like-minded individuals. Basically, finding your tribe has been difficult. I can see that with Uranus in opposition to your Mars, but here's what's cool. Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus in your 11th house is like, it doesn't just have to be healers. This could be herbalists. This could be people who work with Bach essences or aromatherapists. This could be people who also work with food, or people who work with flowers. This could be massage therapists. and finding a network of people who you can work with. I think that's something what I really loved. Like when I started doing the work that I was doing, I was working with a bunch of other readers, and like I knew that I was really good at reading tarot and astrology, and I could understand things and, you know, explain it to people, but I'm not really in the treatment department. So I would say, okay, well, this is what you got going on. You know, go and see this person who does massage, or go and see this person who does aromatherapy or Reiki. And I would kind of send them out and created like a network. And it was really instrumental in helping build my business because, you know, healers have a tendency to kind of want to heal, and you have other people sometimes who can do readings or other things that can kind of like diagnose. So that will be really helpful for you. And I'm optimistic that will happen because you're going to see Jupiter go into Gemini, and there's going to be a whole slew of planets that are going to go through your 11th house. So also that next new moon that's going to be in Gemini, I think is really important for going and mixing and mingling with other people and communicating and like sharing some of this stuff with others. But definitely think about how you can diversify the other people that you can kind of network with. And you might find that it's actually like your line of support when it comes to going solo. Okay. She says, crazy, I've been getting downloads to work with herbs and crystals, right? Well, you can learn things from other people too. So Jupiter in the 11th house is great for classes and courses and stuff you can do with others, and you might make some friends along the way. So hopefully that's helpful for you, Brandy. Good luck in your healing practice. Good on you for deciding to quit your muggle job. You're healing just in another form, you know? That's definitely a big turning point when you're like, am I quitting? All right, so we've got Paula. That's the last of my level 3 people, and then we will move on to everybody else. I'll give you guys a roll call, let you know who I've got. All right, Paula, well, thanks for being patient. What do you want to know, girl? Let's see. Where is she? Let me know if you have a specific question. You know, I always have stuff to say to you. Let's look at this new moon for you, right on your Saturn. How are you doing with Pluto square Mars? Hopefully better than me. Are you pissed off all the time too? It's not a fun transit. Ask your question whenever you want to send it, but I do want to say this new moon that you have going on is a Gemini rising. It's in your 12th house. So it's like this preparation, reevaluation, turning inward, focusing on alone time, you know, meditating, like finding time. I love Gemini risings because Taurus in the 12th house is like you get comfortable, you get your snacks, right? You hang out, you can kind of relax and like pamper yourself. Like it's a great place to have Taurus in my opinion. Venus kind of 12th house connection. So that seems to be part of the intention that's being set with this new moon. Simultaneously, it's on your Saturn. So it's going to be like healing and needing to take time to be away and reevaluating things, resting, recuperating. You know, Saturn does rule your 9th house, so it could be setting intentions to travel. It could be making time to continue a course or going to school. It could be, you know, sticking to a bedtime and being like, I need to rest more often. But I asked you about your Mars because Mars rules health and Pluto has been in a square with your Mars. So I don't know if this has been overworking, having health stuff. I don't know if this has been having a sense of like feeling like something needs to change with your health, your routine, and your habits. And so this could be a new moon that could quite literally put you in bed early at 6 p.m. and then you sleep for 2 days, you know, or it could put you in a situation where you're like, I need to go and see a chiropractor, or I need to go and get a massage, or there's something kind of going on where, oh, there it is. No. She says, I cracked my rib. My big dog jumped on me when I got x-ray. They found a lung nodule. Now I have to go for a biopsy. How does that look for me? I would like to see how my month is going to go. Okay, so like I said, 12th house can literally put you down. So the good news is this is the house of healing. Saturn, by the way, is the bones. I can't really say much for the lungs. Saturn is more the bones, but this can be showing you where there was something that you weren't aware of. Mars in Scorpio is notorious for having issues pertaining to like cellular, you know, like things that are abnormal. So biopsies and things like that, because Scorpio is a Pluto energy. So having Pluto square Mars could be what's bringing up the health related things. Now it's at 2 degrees. So it is either costly or it does require some kind of removal or cutting. You know, Pluto can be something that is growing and Mars can be something that needs to be removed. Typically, we want to look at like progress charts and other things to see like what's going on. But that square is going to be playing off and on for the better part of like, you know, like still the next year before it's cleared. But when we look at other things, you know, Mars is the ruler of your 6th house, and you're going to have like a Mars retrograde that's going to be happening in Leo. So that will actually start in your whole sign 3rd house, which is about the lungs and breathing, and it will make oppositions to Pluto. So I'm confident that if they're doing a biopsy and they find something, they may come back to you very quickly and say, okay, you know, we need to either treat it or we need to remove something. Usually really serious, you know, health issues would be connected to like the 8th house. The ruler is Saturn. Saturn is also squaring your ascendant. So that can be other issues that you're having pertaining literally, you know, to your body, because Saturn is trying to have you, you know, go through removing something, right? Ribs are Saturn. But Gemini is the lungs. So it's through possibly issue with your rib that you're like, oh my God, there's something going on with my lungs. You're not having eclipses in your 6th house, okay? So that's not bringing anything in terms of your health. I'm more focused on what's going to be happening with the Mars retrograde at the end of this year. Saturn, you know, in your 10th house squaring the ascendant and Pluto squaring your Mars, it's saying you have to slow down. There is something going on that's wanting you to slow down and really look at your health and your lifestyle. So obviously, you know, nobody decides that they're going to have some kind of growth, but it might mean, are you not getting adequate rest? Is there something going on with your diet? Is there something going on that you weren't aware of? All while Jupiter and Uranus are opposing your natal Jupiter. So it wants you to rest. It also wants you to go to 12th house places, which are going to be treatment centers or doctor's offices or things like that. I'm not a doctor. I can't give you medical advice, but I will say that something that looks like it is going to benefit your health is adequate sleep. And also with Pluto square Mars, this is going to be about removing something, getting it tested, and also possibly looking into alternative forms of healing. I think of Pluto and Aquarius as like frequency, right? I also think of this as like energy healing. I think of this as things that are going to be kind of like futuristic, okay? So, okay, Pluto can be kind of connected with Aquarius to things that are going to be, you know, new developments in technology with medicine. They might say, well, you know, we have this other treatment. We don't want to do something super invasive. It might send you in the direction of wanting to learn more about Eastern medicine and other things that you can be doing to possibly treat something and get ahead of it before you're deciding to do something that can be really intensive on the body. So some things that I would say to look into would be go and learn about, you know, this frequency healing. Go and learn about like stuff going on with Rife machines. I think that would be good for Pluto and Aquarius. I would also go and learn about like soursop leaves. I would go and learn about also other treatments that are coming out that are a little out there because Pluto's in Aquarius for cancer. I'm not saying you have it. I'm just saying that I would think outside of the box with Pluto square Mars. You're going to be looking at needing to take time down though for the next month because planets are moving through your 12th house. Now, when Mars comes into Taurus, it's going to square Pluto. So I'm assuming you're going to have your answer, you know, round about, let's say sometime right around mid-June, or there may be a sense of being like, okay, now we're deciding what the next step is actually going to be. And likely you'll get it then. And then Mars will go into let's see, it'll go into your 12th house, and this is also going to be about resting as well in July. So those time periods are going to be critical, but just glancing at your annual perfections here, let's see, what annual perfection are you in this year? You're in a Mars year, Scorpio, 6th house year. So Mars is your time lord until December, and Mars will go retrograde right before your birthday in Leo. So the more critical health turning point for me would be mid-July and would also be December. When you're in a 6th house year, it's kind of like more or less amplifying the whole sign 6th house, where you have Mars in its home sign, Venus, which unfortunately is not happy in Scorpio, so it can be about health-related matters, and then you also have Jupiter. So it's like through that awareness of, hey, there's a problem, we need to get in, we need to treat it. I really feel like this is something that came up for a reason, so you could, you know, take care of it early or make sure that, you know, you were at least aware that these things were actually happening. But I'm not seeing things that are screaming, you know, that this is like an end of the world situation. Send me a message on Skype. I'll send you a whole list of some stuff that I would recommend that you look into that I cannot really recommend on the internet, but send me a message and I'll send you what I've got. Anyway, I'm sending you lots of good vibes and healing, and I know I'm talking to you pretty soon. Because I think you're on my book, so let me know. All right, so that was Paula. Everybody send Paula some good healing vibes. She's a long-term client of mine. All right, so let's sign into PayPal again. And I'm going to give you guys the rundown for who I have that has been waiting. All right, so let's update this list here so we can get everyone. All right. All right, so here is the list that I have for you guys. So I've got Rome, Lily, Amanda. Who else do I have here? Is it Aya? Aja? Asha? Judy, Alyssa, Silk, Diana, Austin, Christine, Stephanie, Gabriella, and Sarah. Okay, so if you heard your name, I've got you. Hey, Catherine, we got you. I did the reading. You'll be able to watch the playback. You're in the beginning. You're like the probably second person I do a reading for. All right, so let's get Rome, Lily, and Amanda in the queue. All right, so let's pull up Rome. What's up, Rome? Are you in the chat? I think I saw you. Alyssa says, thanks for doing readings while you're on vacation. Well, there's no sleep for the wicked. All right, so let's see what Rome says. He says, I'm in Texas, but I'm living with my sister who I can't trust, and I don't feel safe here. I don't have a ton of options right now, but I feel like I need to move. The only place I can go is Florida to sell solar and live with a bunch of randoms I don't know. I'm not sure if I really want to, if this is what I really want to do. I feel like I need to get away from my family. They betrayed me. I need a place to stay in Texas or move to Florida. I did it before and I didn't like it. It isn't really my thing. What do you see? All right, so let's take a look, Rome. Sounds like you're in a bit of a spot, but the good news is that Mars is moving through your ascendant. So I would imagine like the last month or so, yeah, feeling a little chaotic, right? Solar eclipse in your first house, things are changing personally, going through some kind of needing to work through, healing something on a personal level. Mercury does deal with siblings, so going back and communicating with a sibling, going back and forth about a living situation. Work is more Saturn. And so part of what's going on is like, Saturn is hanging out in your 12th house, and it does represent being like, I don't know what direction I'm going with work. Let's talk about the positives. Mars is your ruling planet. So the fact that Mars is getting ready to cross your ascendant means that you're jumping into action and you're making a move and you're doing what's best for you. So that's going to be happening here for you literally over the next couple of days, especially around like the 9th, 10th, and the 11th. Personally, I feel like it's challenging because you're going to see Mars come into a lot of oppositions with your 7th house. So dealing with other people down the road as you get later into May going into June gets a little tricky, especially when it hits like around 16 degrees. So about the 20th until it comes out of an opposition with Pluto, which is going to be closer to about the 5th. So be mindful at that time. There is frustration, with anybody. With selling to people, with dealing with, a sister, with dealing with other people, like that's pretty much a guarantee. There are still going to be some positive transits though. I think Jupiter changing signs does seem to indicate you're on the move, that you're going to be moving to a new area, even though you may go back and forth as to whether or not you want to stay there. I also feel like Jupiter still going through your 2nd house and meeting with Mercury and some other placements does indicate moving somewhere to be able to work and making some money, even if it's something that you do temporarily. And then I also think about how down the road, you're also going to be seeing at the end of this year, Mars retrograding through Cancer. So it can represent, maybe you go somewhere, in the summertime, and then you're like, okay, I've done this for a period of time, and now I'm moving to somewhere that's going to be more stable. Part of what's going on also is that, Uranus is now coming into an opposition with Mars. The positive is that it can bring sudden opportunities to make money and to have a total change in your fortune. Granted, you're going to be working for somebody else because Mars is in the 8th house, so it's helping other people make money, so selling things. The downside with Uranus starting to come into an opposition with Mars, it does mean that through some feeling of instability with resources or home or living situation, there can be some really intense exchanges you can have with other people. So you don't want to feel like you're in a position where you're living somewhere where somebody's pressuring you. It's like, you have to do this if you live here. You may find that that's what's kind of coming up. Now in the background though, Saturn is going to start coming into a trine with your Mars. So it's trying to put you in a situation where you're working somewhere privately, right? Saturn is your job. I'm just going to throw a couple things out there. I've seen a lot of Aries risings with this transit that are like, oh, I'm going and working for a hospital, or I'm getting a job working for a prison facility, or I'm working at an inpatient center where people are detoxing, or I'm going and working with people, in a shelter, or I'm doing something where I'm giving back to the community. There are other jobs that will present themselves purely because Saturn is still sextiling your midheaven and your south node. Equally, Saturn is trining the north node in Cancer. Now, this could be saying you get some kind of work where you're going to be managing a property, or somebody says, hey, I need somebody to be a house sitter. Maybe you decide that you want to get into house sitting and you're watching people's homes basically with Saturn trine the north node, kind of holding down a job behind the scenes and simultaneously having a place where you could stay. That's an option that I would really consider looking at. There are lots of apps and other companies that will literally do a background check on somebody, be like, okay, we're going to put up a profile and you're doing house sitting or you're doing pet sitting. And I'm using house sitting specifically because it's trining the north node in Cancer, which is homes at a 10, which is a job. So that can be something that you could definitely do that I think would buy you some time, at least until you get to later this year when you see the Mars retrograde and then you're reevaluating where you want to be. I know you may not be crazy about going and taking a job where you might be in another state and you're trying to sell something, but the transits seem to indicate it would be more so positive now. By the way, solar is very much connected to the sun, and you've got Jupiter and Uranus in your money-making house trining the sun. So you have better aspects, basically, this spring going into the summer to do that type of work. With Jupiter in your 3rd house, are you going to be hitting the pavement and going house to house and talking to people and picking up phones and making sales calls? Yes, you are. That will happen. But I also think a lot of this is going to be about education and instruction. So there may also be jobs that pop up where you're like, okay, it's up to me to train people to go out and sell this stuff. Or maybe it's going to be you deciding that you want to go to local businesses and you're like, look, this is what I can teach you. Here's all the incentives to be able to make this jump. Why not consider making the jump? Here you go. We're going to see power bills are going to go through the roof with Jupiter in Uranus conjunct. We're going to see energy become more critical. We're going to see it become more costly. And I feel like we're going to see others who are going to be more open to the idea of actually making the switch. So really what you want to be working on is getting into a position where you're kind of moving out of sales. You're moving more into either training, or you're going to be educating other people about why it's so important. And I think you may find that it's actually pretty lucrative. Money is ruled by Venus, and Saturn is now coming in out of an opposition with your Venus, so that's good news. You're also seeing that Jupiter is hovering around your Chiron, so there is this feeling of being like, moving through some money stuff, having some issues with self-esteem and self-worth, but simultaneously, there is an opportunity here to be like, okay, I'm going to make lemonade, and I'm going to make the decision to kind of stick to something and see what happens. I also know that there could be a job change that's happening in August. So I really kind of feel like if you were to do this, it would be probably for a few months for you to kind of feel it out, get to a new spot, and then decide, do I want to try to move up in this particular field, or am I looking for something else? But at the very least, I think it could actually benefit something about, being able to relocate. Sibling stuff is an issue right now. You know, as an Aries rising with the South Node on your Mercury, you're realizing like communicating with the siblings not working. It's difficult. You might feel like they can be kind of dominating because you have Mercury conjunct Saturn in your 7th house, where you're kind of like, you know what, they're hard to talk to. They're not open-minded. There is some harshness going on there. And it's about getting out of that. So naturally, you're going to feel like, well, I want to move away from that right now. And what you're kind of embracing is the North Node in Aries, which is like, I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm not going to stick around. I'm going to make decisions pretty quickly. And you may find when we start seeing sextiles between Aries placements and Gemini, really the end of May, beginning of June, that through the willingness to take a chance and kind of travel, that it's actually going to bring you lots of opportunity. And I think, you know, Jupiter being connected to travel, but also education, it's really a good idea for you to know what you're selling, know what you're talking about, and really get out there and try to move up in that particular field. But definitely consider some of the other options that I kind of spoke about, like Saturn in the 12th house. You could go and do some kind of intake. You wouldn't want to, I would assume, you know, working in a jail or a facility, or, you know, a health facility or a mental facility. You could do that. If this were me, I would be looking more so into the house sitting, because I feel like that would work really nicely with the trine and also to the sextile. And it would give you the opportunity to have some privacy and feel like you can do some healing. So I hope that that's helpful in giving you some insight. It does look like next month is going to be an adventure. And I think especially when like Jupiter and Mars come into conjunction, that's going to amplify the energy of Jupiter. And you're going to, I don't think possibly, I think very much so, you're going to have a very much more positive, optimistic outlook by as early as August about some of the changes and the relocations that you've made. So hopefully that's helpful for you. All right, so who else do we have here? We've got, sorry, move this over. We've got Lily, and then Amanda. All right, let's see what Lily has to say. November 11th, 87. Should I hire a full SEO service for my business for 2024, 2025? It's a big investment. Okay. So let's take a look here. So she's asking about investing in SEO, people who are going to kind of help get her out there and get seen. So services is going to be more your 6th house. Okay. So this is people who help you. She is a late degree Virgo rising, Sun in Scorpio, Moon in Cancer. So for late Virgo risings, you know, late Virgo risings, early Libra risings, you guys are having the Saturn transit in the 6th house. All right. So there's a sense of being like, who can I find? Who can help me when it comes to handling some business stuff? Whether this is somebody who's going to manage things, schedule things, or just help bring you more clients. That's why this is happening. So Saturn moving through your 6th house, it is trining your sun, okay? And you'll see that off and on basically all year long. Let me put there we go, the planet's up now. So you'll see that kind of go back and forth all year long. So that is helping you when it comes to visibility. That is helping you when it comes to making money. But really what I'm thinking about is also the transits in your 7th house, which is about your public recognition, right? 7th house is, how do I bring in more clients? How do I bring in more people that I can service? There's been an eclipse there. The eclipse that we just recently had was on your Jupiter. So it looks like you're saying, okay, I'm willing to invest some money, right? Because Jupiter is a part of your whole sign 8th, into more visibility and being seen. The thing is that I would really think about is that you're still being impacted by Venus, you know, transits with that South Node in your 2nd house whole sign. And you're also still being impacted by the fact that Neptune is squaring your midheaven, that, you know, Saturn is going to come into a square with your midheaven. I would ask them how long the commitment is. I'm going to assume it's a year if you're saying, should I do it for 2020? Was it 2024 or 2025? Let's see. 2024 into 2025. And ask them how long the commitment is. Because there's going to be 2 times that you're going to be reevaluating working with someone. This is going to be when Saturn turns retrograde and you're going to be like, okay, am I getting my money's worth? Am I actually really bringing in more clients? Is it worth what I've been doing? And that's going to be in July. Okay, Saturn's turning retrograde. And another time is going to be as a Virgo rising, when you see Jupiter turn retrograde, and that's going to be happening in the fall. So that'll be in November. In theory, though, to be honest with you, I think Jupiter going into your whole sign 10th house is bringing you more recognition. The only issue that I see is that like Neptune on the descendant, regardless, even if you're putting your information out there, it can be harder for people to find you. And this is at 27. So it tells me that you're going to be hitting it in two different ways. So I would say, well, how are they going to be getting your name out there? Obviously, they're going to be optimizing searches and stuff, but you know, this is a Gemini degree. So it means like, is there stuff popping up on apps? Are you getting ads for things? Are they creating a master list of like words? Is there some kind of cross reference between two different kinds of practices that you may have? You know, you specialize in this and you specialize in that. Like you're going to want to make sure that they're doubling down basically on how you're getting seen. Eventually, and you'll see this in August and you'll see this in December, we will see Jupiter in your whole sign 10th house, expanding your career, squaring Saturn in your 7th. So you're going to be more critical during these 2 points of whoever you're hiring to do this work because, well, Saturn rules your 6th house. So it's going to be like, are they bringing me more people? You know, I would really do your due diligence. Having that Gemini degree on the descendant, I feel as if you really want to make sure that you've sussed out all the potential people who can be working with you or all the potential different companies who could be working with you. You may be going back and forth between 2 people and be like, okay, you know, I'm going to work with this one person, and you may potentially change your mind, especially when you start seeing Jupiter go into your 10th house next year. However, I do see some growth that's going to be happening, especially when you start to see like Venus coming into conjunction with Jupiter. So this is even before you do anything, I assume. And this is in your 9th house of marketing. So if you do decide to do this soon, you'll see something right off the bat, pretty much at the end of May. And then another time will be when Mars comes into conjunction with Jupiter. And I do think that's also going to be bringing you a lot of work. So this will be in August. But like I said, you'll see that square to Saturn. So the question is, because the 9th house is marketing and 6th house is work, is it, you know, how fast are they promising results? Do they have other people who have testimonials? Have you been able to see other businesses that have also been able to have significant growth? Can they show you those facts and those figures? You know, she's trying to decide between 2 companies. You're going to want to go with somebody who's going to be able to show you that they can specialize in your field. That's my opinion, right? You want to see somebody who's basically going to be saying, okay, you know what? We've got X amount of people that we've worked specifically in your field, and this is how we can help you. The other option is you can propose, if they're willing to do it, you know, splitting this up and being like, can we do 6 months and then see how it goes? It's not a matter of paying for it. It's a matter of you want to really see, are you going to get the results that you're looking for? This could also be simultaneously doubling down. You know, you may talk to them and they may say, well, when you're posting content or when you're putting stuff on a blog or when you're posting on your social media, this is the list we want you to use. It may actually require you to play a role, an active role in participating and promoting your business. So the way that you could also interpret, you know, that Gemini degree is like they're saying these are the things you need to be using in your post. So that way we are making sure that you're actually getting out there and that you're being seen. So you're doubling down, so to say. Investments personally is more Mars. And when we look at your natal Mars, there was an eclipse on your Mars recently, which for me, I think was enough to start the process of being like, okay, I'm going to be investing right here. All right. So Mars, and that was your 8th house ruler. And that started in the fall of last year. So now it's coming full circle because we've had a retrograde, right? That's been in opposition where you're like, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? And now Mars is going to come into an opposition, which means pretty much somebody's going to be like, yes, if I start doing the work for you, I want to get paid. And likely you're going to pull the trigger and you're going to choose to work with somebody, I think, at the end of May. Like you will see growth, right? But keep in mind, you want to choose somebody who's going to be able to work best with you with your specific field. And I would want to see those facts and figures and see examples of, you know, what other people in your particular industry have been able to achieve. Keep in mind also that, you know, Jupiter going into your 10th house next year, like you're going to have more visibility. You're going to make more money. It is in a Taurus degree. And right after it leaves, it's going to hit your moon. And then it's also going to start trining all of your placements in your second house. So it may be something where you start to see it build and then you're like, okay, it's only built so much up until, you know, August. And then you're, oh, it's building up again in the fall. And then you're kind of like, okay, you know, at the end of the year, it's kind of consistent. And then you see it build up again, you know, in the new year. But when this is all said and done, I think because Jupiter is clients and Jupiter is going to come into a trine with your Mars, basically, you know, in September, you're going to see some growth. And then you're going to see this pretty significantly spring of next year and then clear into next year. So I do think that you will see spurts of things that are going to be kind of happening within those time periods. I really feel like Jupiter is, when it's exalted in Cancer in your 10th house and making trines to Pluto in your sun, I think it will be worth it. But it's still possible that a year from now, you're like, okay, I've learned everything I need to learn from these people. Now I'm going to be doing it myself, or now I'm going to be, you know, taking those master lists. And then Saturn will also be out of your 6th house. But 2 years of eclipses in your 6th house in Pisces, you know, the one thing personally, I have Pisces in the 6th house too, that I've been kind of weird about with this transit is, well, can I trust the people I'm hiring? You know, are they actually going to do the work if I were to potentially bring somebody in? And that Pisces energy of being like, I don't know if they can handle it. So you want to think about that because, you know, I think that with the North Node going into Pisces, and Jupiter being in the 10th house, you know, a year from now, you may have, you know, like AI platforms and stuff that will literally write everything out and do everything for you, right? And you may find that there's something that's like, okay, I'm willing to kind of do this myself now. So there may be something better in about a year's time that you're feeling more that you can manage. And regardless, you know, eclipses, when they start happening in Pisces in your 6th house, it's definitely going to be about being like, is this working and is this not? And I would personally be looking at the eclipse that's going to start in Pisces this fall. Where is it? Here we go. Here. So you're going to have one in your 6th house here in September. And it's going to square Jupiter. So you're going to be like, am I getting as much out of it? You know, like I said, it'll come in spurts. And then the other time that I would be watching would be the spring of 2025, when you're going to have a Mercury retrograde, a Venus retrograde. It's all going to kind of dip into your 6th house. And so I feel like you will do this for a year. That's kind of the feeling that I get. I think you'll do it for a year and then you'll be like, I think there's other things out there. Yes, you've had some growth, but I think you'll be seeing who else or what else you can be working with. And that's also mirrored in Mars going retrograde over your moon, right? It's okay, what am I spending Mars when it comes to my business and my reputation? And like, do I need to be finding another way to do this? You know, is it a good bump for a year? Yeah, and you'll see it come in spurts. But I think next year you're going to end up kind of doing something different. And you know, Saturn on the North Node next year may very well mean that that's a time where, you know, you're kind of leveling up in your business, and maybe you're like, it's a new location, or I'm having to find an accountant or somebody else that you're having to deal with when it comes to kind of managing your business, because things will be growing. But the good news is Saturn will trine your moon and the Mars retrograde and also your sun. So whatever changes that you're making intuitively, that's like this is or is not working, likely is going to help you become more productive, I think, in the long run. But I do think that you will end up choosing to work with somebody round about the end of May. Okay? I hope that is helpful for you. Tough stuff, man. Pluto squaring your Mercury. You're like, how much do I want to invest in my own business, you know? And in the second house, usually you do everything. There is a sense of you doing everything by yourself. So the Pluto square to Mercury is like that. Do I have to feel the pressure of, you know, bringing somebody else in? But a lot of this, I think, is like learning how to delegate tasks and being like, you know, is it best for me? Is it not? Do I need to learn how to be more hands off and just do certain things and like leave stuff to other people? I think a lot of Virgo risings are kind of going through that right now. But I hope that was helpful. And yes, birthday twin. We're birthday twins. Let me know how it works out for you. Okay, so we have got, let's see here. We have got handy dandy list. There we go. Amanda, Aja, and Alyssa, you guys are all next. Let's pull up Amanda. Hey, Rom, you might have just missed it. I don't know if there was a glitch, but I definitely did your reading. You were after Paula. So you were the first batch that I did of people who came through, who signed up on the queue. So you'll be able to either go back or you can watch the replay, but I definitely did your reading. All right, so we've got Amanda. Amanda is January 2nd, 85 at 11:44 p.m. She says, please give me any insights on possible career and financial transits within my chart. Currently, I'm up for a promotion at work and should know by the end of the month if I received it. I'm in the process of purchasing a new home and a new outside business venture. If you can shed some light. All right, cool. So she's asking about career endeavors. We've got another 29-degree mutable. So you guys are all kind of getting hit with this like Neptune stuff right now. So when it comes to money, Venus rules your second house of money. Okay, Libra on the second house cusp. So the good news is Venus is in your 8th house, which is receiving from other people, right? And your North Node is also in the 8th house. So it is about learning to receive support, physical, financial support from other people. So Venus coming into conjunction with your moon, which is intercepted. So you're like, where's the money coming? Is it going to show up? And also Uranus and also Jupiter. It seems like there's some really good news that's coming in terms of money that you're going to be receiving. So timing kind of seems bang on. You know, we want to see Venus coming into conjunction with the new moon degree, which could be right around May 14th. We want to see Venus maybe coming into conjunction with your North Node, which is going to be right around the 20th. And then we see Venus conjuncting Jupiter, which is going to be right around the 22nd. So one of those days seems like that's when this is going to be happening for you. You know, in terms of relationships, you know, it can be your relationship with other people and like they're being more generous and abundant with you as well. Mercury more rules your career. So right after you see this Venus-Jupiter conjunction, then you're going to see Jupiter go into Gemini, the Sun go into Gemini. So it all seems to be hitting like the 3rd and 4th week of May. So it seems to kind of resonate with your timeline. So I do feel like there is going to be a breakthrough. The other thing that I would just keep in the back of my mind is that you have Pluto at 4 degrees, which is about a home, and it's in the second house of possession. And over the next few years, Pluto is squaring Pluto. So you come into this when you're, you know, kind of like coming into your late 30s, early 40s. Pluto square Pluto makes you kind of clean out all the gunk. Pluto in the second house says, I want to possess this. So I want to have a home, right? But it can also be about debt, right? So when Pluto starts coming into square with Pluto, you know, you may be feeling that pressure to be like, I need my side business to get going, you know, so I can pay my mortgage, so I can pay my taxes. I need something to be solid and, you know, kind of like really lucrative when it comes to my own personal business to be able to kind of afford that. I say that now just to be cautious when it comes to interest rates, how much debt you take on, if you're getting something you have to renovate, things like that. Like don't put too much pressure or too much on your plate financially, knowing that you're coming into those Pluto squares. Be very, very careful with that. In terms of like your own personal stuff, I mean, like, look, you know, Pluto is in your 5th house, which means you're learning how to take chances and take risks when it comes to creative endeavors, whether that's romance, you know, relationships, you know, having children, all that stuff. And it's still trining your ascendant. And so I know being a Virgo rising, super focused on details, super critical, you have all of your act together. I do feel like one theme that comes up for Virgo risings is that Jupiter is going to go into your 10th house, whole sign this year, which means, you know, 2 jobs, you're juggling more than one thing, or you got a business that you're, you know, running. And then also, you know, you've got like a full-time, you know, career, and like, it could be a lot. And you will see, you know, Jupiter start coming into squares with Saturn. So I feel like there's also this sense of being like, okay, you know, I'm trying to do this and do that, or I'm trying to figure out how to market my business and like get my work done. And so there is some pressure you're going to see in August and also December of being able to do both of these things. Eventually, Jupiter will go into your 10th house next year. Okay, so that's further expanding your career. And you're also going to see when it does, it's going to start trining your Pluto. So I don't know if your goal is to eventually segue into something else or like what the deal is, but just kind of keep that in mind, you know, that there's gonna be some big changes at work or some big decisions revolving around which career you're focusing on, like spring and summer of 2025. She says, I sold a home last September and moved to be closer to home. I have a lot of changes lately. You're a Capricorn also. So, you know, eclipses, retrogrades in Aries, you're here as a Capricorn, it's about your home. And so in your case it is, but it's going through the 8th house of change. She says, I also still have a business with my ex-husband, trying to figure out if I need to sail out of that too. Always worked outside of the business. You know, something to think about is the 8th house is joint resources. So, you know, because Jupiter is other people and it can be your ex-husband or your ex-partner, there can be a sense of being like, okay, do we sell this business? Do you want to buy me out? You know, you could use those transits at the end of May going into June to discuss those things too. I think that that's very, very possible. Most likely, you know, when Saturn finally moves into Aries and we see the retrograde next spring, there may be a dissolving of that business relationship anyway. So if you feel like it's something that could potentially sell and you guys could make money off of it and you could go your separate ways, or if you decide, hey, you know, I want to see if he wants to buy me out of it so I can kind of have some extra income, just know Uranus on your moon, Jupiter on your moon, all these planets hitting your north node, it's about receiving. So it's like, okay, I received the bonus, right? I'm receiving support from other people. I'm going to be letting other people be generous with me. It's going to be really beneficial also the fact that, you know, you've been going through some significant changes with your home, because I think it's going to have much more of a positive kind of impact on you emotionally as well. I would go and learn about Neptune squaring your midheaven. You know, I'm a Libra rising right now, so I'm having that transit too. It's a lot of like, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? You know, like, what am I supposed to be when I grow up? So there can be this sense of seeing yourself differently, seeing your, you know, career differently, seeing your relationships differently. And there is this sense of being open to ending one phase and beginning another. So it's going to want you to say, well, do I want to let that business go? Do I let that relationship go? To bring in the new things. And yeah, spring of next year, I think that's the inevitable. You know, Venus and Mercury retrograde through your descendant in your 7th house. It could be that's when you finally separate the business. That could be when you meet a new business partner. That could be when you get into a new relationship. A Venus retrograde and a Mercury retrograde, you know, your Mercury, Venus is your money. So it means you're going back and forth and deciding whether or not, you know, you're wanting to make changes to what services you have in your own business, or it could mean that you're trying to work out a deal where you're separating the business with your ex-partner. Yeah, Neptune square the angles is like, it's a bitch. It's really hard, especially when you have it at 29 degrees, because it's like so, 29 degrees of Pisces is like, what'll happen if I give it all up? You know, like, but I actually feel like it wants you to wrap things up right now. It wants you to be like, nope, I don't need to do this. I don't need to hold on to this. So you want to pay attention more to what you're holding on to that is kind of like illusions of security, right? Or grand ideas of what your career or relationships could be, and try not to like have a death grip on any of these things. Be more open to making change in these departments, because it's gonna bring new things in, especially when, you know, we see Saturn and Neptune go into Aries. That's new things. We see Jupiter go into Cancer. That's new things. These are cardinal energies. So much of the Saturn Neptune stuff is trying to tell people, no, we got to let this thing go. It's kind of got to dissolve. And you're going to see as Jupiter comes into the square this year that you're going to be like, I'm glad that I moved. I'm glad that I made these changes. I'm glad that I let that place go or that relationship go. And you're going to feel, I think, a little invigorated with some of the changes. And all Capricorn suns are rising are going to be juggling more than one job. So you'll definitely be very busy. But look for the abundance, the sweetness to be coming in at the end of this month. Yeah, we should do drinks together and complain about Neptune, because it's not fun. But on the positive side, it makes you like idealistic and kind of intuitive and dreamy and kind of like anything is possible. So there can be the other side of it. You need to know when to take the rose-colored glasses off, you know? Anyway, I hope that's helpful for you, Amanda. Good luck navigating with Neptune. All right, so we've got Aja, Judy, and Alyssa. Is it Aja or Aja? I just want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. You're welcome, Amanda. You're born June 13th, 93 at 1:19 p.m. in New York. For Taurus new moon reading, thank you. All right, I got you. Thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. All right, let's not do an eclipse. Let's do a new moon. There we go. There we go. Oh, I'm on full moon. Hello. I'm like, where is it? All right, so you were asking about the new moon in Taurus on May 7th, 2024. She says, thanks, Candace. I appreciate you doing readings on your vacation. I got your question, but if you have a different question in mind, let me know. I am happy to answer that for you. What do you see for my love life with the eclipse happening in my 1st and 7th house in the fall? I'm a lone wolf. Recently let go basically all of my friendships. Saturn in the 7th ate me up. Another late degree Virgo rising. Are you guys okay? I'm taking notes as I'm watching the Saturn-Neptune transits going in the 7th house, and I'm like, ugh. I'm a 7th house Aries moon too. I've been single for almost 6 or 7 years. I'm wondering if it'll bring better people, lovers, and what do you see for pregnancy? All right, so a couple things. One is Neptune's going through your 7th house. So there's this sense of, I don't know how to relate to other people very well, especially communication, right? Because it's at a 27. But Jupiter is your 7th house lord. So, you know, Jupiter going into the conjunction with Uranus, moving into your 9th house is more meeting people long distance, meeting people through traveling or education, you know, something like that. So that does amplify the possibility of being able to meet someone. Just because the conjunction already happened doesn't mean it's done. When Mercury goes over these degrees, it is possible that somebody can kind of come into your life. They could be culturally different. They could live in another place. Maybe you meet them while they're traveling or while you're traveling. So I would say look for that. That can be anywhere from like the 27th of May through the beginning of June. Saturn has yet to fully go into your Placidus 7th house though. So that's the other thing, is that when Saturn shows up, it can become more serious. You have Capricorn intercepted in your 5th. So that means that when it comes to relationships and love, you're like, okay, it can be challenging. You've got both Neptune and Uranus there intercepted. So that can also mean that there is some strange and unusual events when it comes to relationships or when it comes to procreation and having kids. It's pretty common for, I think, Virgo and Libra rising, because the 5th house is ruled by Saturn, to have kids later in life. Okay, so she's going to be in Ibiza, so perfect timing. The other thing that I would say that I'm just noticing is that, you know, Mercury rules your chart and it opposes Neptune and Uranus. So there can be this sense of being like, I want to have a committed relationship. I want something long-term. I want to have a public relationship, but not always seeing eye to eye maybe with other people about what you're looking for and what you want, right? Jupiter as a Gemini, it's going into your sign this year. It's going to be hovering around your south node as well as your sun. So it is possible you can connect with people in other places, make friends, travel, be dealing with some good karma in relationships. You might meet somebody while doing any of these things. And I really feel like the time that I would be watching that is going to give you like more substance, I think is going to be the eclipse that's going to happen along your descendant in September of this year. So I don't know. I know you mentioned some kind of like an eclipse. I assume this is the one that you're talking about. So this will be on the 17th, right on your descendant. So it's about partnership. Conjunct Neptune, so it can feel very dreamy. And it's going to be square Jupiter. So Jupiter on your sun is like, are we friends or are we something more? Like, what are we doing here? And it can also represent your philosophy shifting, revolving around the way that you look at relationships. So this will be the first eclipse in a series of eclipses that will be in Pisces as well as Virgo. This basically means for you that it's bringing that energy now at the end of this year for the next 2 years of like, okay, what kind of dream relationship do you want? And, you know, where are dreams great, but we need reality, we need substance, right? Saturn. So I would be watching that eclipse. You might meet somebody and have to be traveling a lot or going back and forth to see them. And then I would also be watching the spring of next year, which I keep referencing, but it's like a very, very big time for the collective. When Venus retrogrades in your 7th house, when Saturn moves into your 7th house, when Mercury retrogrades there, it looks to me like March, April 2025 is like when you figure this out, right? So for any Virgo risings who are watching, your Mercury, right? And Jupiter or Pisces is the 7th house. So when this retrograde happens, there's a sense of reorienting yourself in a relationship. If you haven't been one, you might get into one and it might be very karmic. If you're in one, you might be reassessing. Is it working for me? You know, what are we doing? Where are we going? This is all going to be ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter's on your south node. So it can mean that you're kind of clearing some kind of karma with relationships, shifting the way that you look at them. This is all squaring your sun. So as a Gemini, you're going to hear that it's about your career, maybe. But I think this is more about your status, and you're kind of saying to somebody like, let's get the show on the road. Pluto's now in your 5th house. So there can be also this fixation with children, having kids, you know, changes of relationships. Saturn does rule this house. So I really feel like with these retrogrades conjunct Saturn, spring of 2025 is going to be a deciding moment in a relationship that's like, do you want these things? I want this. Are we doing this? If we are, let's get going. You're going to want to look at when there are some conjunctions or other aspects that are either impacting your natal Saturn or your natal Neptune. And so you are going to see, well, Uranus is still trining your Neptune. And you're also going to see that Jupiter is going to go into Cancer, and it's going to be making some trines to your Saturn. So pregnancy and stuff, you really want to look at progressed moons. You want to look at your secondary progressions and see, you know, do you have a progressed moon in the 2nd? You know, can that be an indication of pregnancy within 2 years? Do you have a progressed moon in the 1st house? Where is your 5th house Lord? It's very complex. I do those readings. I predict a lot of babies, but you have to really look at the solar return, and you have to look at the progressions. And then you look at the lunar returns for each month to see, okay, which month is it going to stick? I would focus more on right now the fact that, you know, Saturn is going to be coming into conjunction with the North Node of Neptune. And it means that you're going to want in this next year more clarity in relationships. And you're going to be like, are you with it or not? Can I rely on you? Are we building this together or not? And really be having those conversations, I think, spring of next year, basically. You know, you're in an annual perfection, you're 7. So usually when you turn 30, all of these things kind of happen. When you get into your birthday in June this year, you'll move into an 8th house annual perfection ruled by Mars. And this is going to be more about getting clarity with a romantic relationship and whether or not you'll be proceeding forward. And then you'll want to watch like the Mars retrograde and stuff that's going to be happening. But it can be that you're kind of undoing some kind of karma in your romantic relationships and focusing more on your goals of home and family. So I do think it's going to be positive. So yeah, that North Node getting ready to hit your moon can definitely bring in a partner. I would say Mars getting ready to hit your moon could also bring in a partner. So if you're open to getting out there and meeting somebody, something can start out very quickly. And then that North Node will hit that, and it's going to instinctually make you go, oh, I want major changes in a relationship. I want more depth. So you're there, the fact that, you know, you're already kind of thinking this way. And when you have Moon in Aries in the 7th house, people who show up, they have to show up and take an initiative, right? They have to be kind of bold in kind of going after you. And they say that wherever your 7th house Lord is how and where you meet your partner. So you notice this is ruled by Jupiter. You got Jupiter in the 1st house. So it basically means you're going to see your partner. You're going to choose your partner. You're going to be the one who's like that one. And your partner should have a combination of like Cancer, Libra, and Aries in their chart. So there should be some kind of like cardinal energies there. And it's at a 4. So it might mean that, you know, you meet them right after you change homes, or maybe, you know, they invite you to their home, or they just moved and then you meet them or something like that. But yeah, the South Node's also getting ready to hit your Jupiter. So that means that you're more open to the idea of being like, okay, it's not just about me kind of having freedom and kind of being out and about, because Jupiter in the 1st house will do that. The North Node in the 7th is like, I'm actually needing to find somebody, and like, I'm willing to learn how to be in a relationship. And Moon in the 7th house has a tendency to kind of change relationships or partners, you know, when the opportunity presents itself quite often or quickly. And so I would just think about what changes are you open to making in relationships right now, okay? So I hope that that's helpful for you, giving you some insight, and I hope you meet someone. All right, so let's talk to Judy. Let's see, do I have Judy here? Let's see, I know I had her. Okay, so there's Eric. Where's Judy? No, why do I not have Judy? Let's see. You're welcome. 9/14/83. So we're doing a Sinistry reading for Judy. Let's see. 2:21 a.m. Oops. There we go. Sorry, Judy. I don't know where you went. All right, so let's look at her question. She says, Sinistry reading, what's in our immediate future? Is he a cheater? So you're September 14th, 83, 2:21 a.m. born in Wisconsin. We've got Eric, that's 1:25/92, 9 p.m. born in Mexico. We have a lot of Pluto Sinistry. Is this good or bad? Okay. Sorry, Ben, I'm just seeing your question. Is the transit of Mercury out of shadow now? No, not until later this week. It's got to pass 26 degrees. So it's got about another week. And it still has to hit Chiron. So it's going to be fun on the back end. All right, so Judy, Leo rising, Sun in Virgo, and your moon is in Sagittarius. I like how you're like, is he a cheater? Because Pluto's on your descendant. So there's this sense of being like, oh, there's this really intense, passionate younger man that's in my life. You know, can I trust him? And then Pluto is retrograding in your 7th. So there are some questionable characters that can show up with that transit. And Pluto is also opposing your ascendant. So there's this sense of going through some significant changes in regards to who you are versus your relationship with other people. Saturn is also coming into an opposition with your Sun. Saturn rules relationships. It's all going to be communication stuff, basically. That's going to be the theme for like the better part of the next year. Saturn opposes your Sun and your Mercury. Okay, so, you know, let's just look at him really quick. So, oops, sorry about that. Let's pull up, where did he go? Eric, there we go. So Eric is a Virgo rising. Okay, he's got Sun in Aquarius, technically in his 5th house, conjunct Saturn. A little bit of a playboy energy here. All that Aquarius in the 5th house, even though the 5th house is Capricorn, you know, Sun, Mercury, Saturn, Neptune. Stellium in the 5th house is like a lover, somebody who's creative, playful, all that fun stuff. They can be a little different when it comes to relationships. I love that Saturn's hitting his 7th house and he's meeting somebody who's older than him, and it's like the possibility of like really falling in love and having a commitment with another person. Like that's very possible here. Is he a cheater? Okay, well, I can't speak specifically for him, but I can just give you a little bit of background on his chart. Venus in Capricorn in the 4th house. So this is generally somebody who is very either home and family focused, a little bit more traditional or conservative with relationships. He has an incredible Saturn signature. Look at all the planets he has in Capricorn. Look at all the planets he has in Aquarius. So all of these transits with like, you know, his Saturn return, you know, recently ending. He's got Pluto heading for his Sun, and also Saturn is going to be about whether or not he's having more transformations in love and relationships. It could be about him having a kid. It could be about whether or not he is opening up enough in relationships, if he's facing his fears, especially childhood fears or anything kind of like pertaining to like, you know, opening his heart. Usually men go after their Venus, but that's still their love style. So Venus in Capricorn can mean he likes older women. But in the 4th house, it's, you know, like I said, the past, home and family related. Can that mean that there can be connections to people from the past? Yes, that can. The other thing I look at is Mars. So for a man's chart, Mars is how they express their masculine energy. It can talk about their libido, their sex drive. It can be talking about, you know, what they kind of go after in relationships. It's also in Capricorn, okay, where it's exalted, which means like, you know, he's a lover. Mars conjunct the North Node is like he's passionate. But that can also be passionate and entrepreneurial. That could be somebody who's really passionate about gambling, taking risks, having fun. And it is conjunct Uranus. So there is like a sense of him going after things. Like he'll be kind of like, he'll assess it out and like think about, okay, you know, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? And then he'll go after it. Mars-Uranus contacts also can be people who have like a bit of a temper, which is contradictory to his Sun conjunct Saturn, which is generally somebody who's more reserved. So I don't know, you tell me. But let's look at the Sinistry. Okay, so I'm going to put you on the outside, you're on the inside, he's on the outside. So some things that I just noticed off the bat is like, look, your 7th house is Aquarius and his Sun and his Saturn is there. So you're literally bringing in somebody who's symbolic, not only of your 7th house, but also your Pluto transit. It's like, okay, this is a really transformational kind of connection. Could it be dark and scary? Sure. But it could also be super passionate. Yeah. You know, Pluto represents your 5th house, which is about younger people, but also romance and children. So it could be like super fixated on somebody that you've met. You've got Venus, pretty close to Neptune, which is why maybe perhaps you're like, can I trust him? Can I not? You've also got his Saturn, which is kind of in opposition to your Mars and your Venus. It's a wide opposition, but it's there. So it can mean that there is like a bit of like a push and pull energy between you and this other person. His Chiron's on your ascendant. You have a Moon Pluto contact. Ooh. So one thing I would say is that his moon being in your 4th house, he can feel like home, he can feel like family, like you guys can do domestic stuff. You know, usually if you see a man's moon in your 4th house, they just like, they will not leave. Like they will literally like move in, like you will not be able to get rid of them. And you might find that he's almost kind of like living with you. But moon conjunct Pluto means that he's activating that Pluto-Saturn aspect of yourself that's like, oh, there's been lots of change and transformation in my home, or, you know, there has been some issues with parents, or there has been some issues pertaining to past relationships. He can trigger that. It's psychic and it's passionate because Pluto can be that, but Moon Pluto is like, if you don't know how to use it, it can bring up things subconsciously for you that don't feel so pleasant. Equally, the other thing that's worth mentioning is that he does have a lot of placements in your 6th house, and that can make you feel like he's very critical of you. And I think somebody who has that much kind of Saturn in their chart can be super mature for their age, or they can be really self-critical and they can project that onto other people. So be mindful of that as well. And then in terms of his Pluto, so he's got Pluto in Scorpio, and his Pluto squares your Venus and your Mars. That's tricky because it does mean that there can be a sense of you like kind of questioning, you know, is this just for fun or is there something more? Obviously, Venus-Pluto contacts can be a little obsessive compulsive. There can be some darker kind of themes in relationships. I wonder if his Pluto in the 5th house is about whether or not he can actually fulfill what you're hoping to achieve in a relationship, and whether that's commitment, true love, children, whatever, like that does kind of come through here. Venus square Pluto, there you need to watch for themes of like jealousy and possessiveness and control. You know, I have seen people who have had this. I've experienced a relationship with somebody who had those square in my Pluto, and just it was not fun because I felt like there was that sense of that person not ever really trusting you, especially if you have Mars and Venus in Leo. Like you need a lot of like worship. You need a lot of attention. You're kind of like Tinkerbell. You know, if you don't get it, then you faint. So there can be this feeling that's like, oh, this person's holding back. They're not giving me what I need. There's got to be another person. What's going on? Right? And you are a Venus retrograde person. So you want to be mindful that you don't want to go 0 to 60 and assume, you know, worst case scenario and that they're not faithful or that they're not cheating, like whatever. He can be a little bit of like a party person with that 5th house stellium, but I don't immediately see anything that's like cheating-esque. And then when I flip it around and I look at his chart with the Virgo rising and I put your stuff on the outside, you also have a 4th house moon overlay, so it feels familiar and kind of family-like. You have the moon Pluto in the second house. So there could be distinct issues revolving around you being like, you need to make more money, or, you know, you need to be valuing this relationship more, or we don't have the same values in relationships. So there could be something critical in regards to that. I feel like it's harder for the moon person than the Pluto person, because you can deal with somebody who has their moon on your Pluto. They're just going to trigger things and you need to work through it and be conscious of it. But Pluto on somebody else's moon can feel like there's so much emotional pressure. And maybe he may feel like, well, you know, I don't know if I can, like, you know, compensate and like be as mature or give you the things that you want. So there can be some stuff coming up about finances that can give some challenges. And then obviously your Mars and Venus fall in the 12th house, which some people say is like an uncompleted karma. It can be past life. I mean, physically, great. 12th house can be lots of, you know, intimacy kind of behind the scenes. It does oppose his sun by sign, so it also represents something that you're reaching for. I love that your Sun and Mercury are in his first house. I feel like that's very complementary to who he is as a person and where he's going. I really like that in Sinistry. I think that the real thing to watch is Saturn going into the 7th house, and he's got his descendant at a 10. So he is supposed to have a relationship with somebody who's older. It is supposed to teach him a lot about relationships. I think Jupiter and Uranus going in the 9th house means that his philosophy about relationships is changing. He might travel with a partner. He might learn more about relationships through somebody who's older than him. And I really feel like when he's got a really strong transit to his natal Jupiter, that's when stuff happens. Well, Saturn's been opposing that. So there may be a feeling of like somebody coming in who's saying to him, I need more than what you're giving me, right? And that's part of the transit. It's like, I need you to grow up, or I need you to be more committed, you know? And he's going to be like, okay. Likely there is going to be a bit of a back and forth with somebody later this year when you see Mars turn retrograde in opposition to his Sun and his Saturn, just because he's an Aquarius. And it'll be happening in his whole sign 12th house, which means somebody's going to give him till about the end of the year. And if he's not getting out of his comfort zone, there's going to be a lot of back and forth with a person. You can get through these transits and stay in a relationship. So it's not kind of spelling out it's the end of the road. But for an Aquarius, Mars in Leo is going to be about somebody being like, we should push forward, and it will oppose Pluto in his sign, which means, oh, you're not ready, or you haven't made the changes yet, you know? He's kind of got like Peter Pan syndrome with all that 5th house, just personally. That's kind of my opinion. And any moon in Libra, regardless of the degree or what house it's in, there is a sense of being like, do I want this or do I not want this? You know, they can kind of go back and forth and not really make a decision about relationships. And so I would feel it out, but know that you're going to start seeing around the retrograde at the beginning of August. And then also you're going to start seeing this around the end of the year, that those are going to be kind of testing grounds to be like, okay, is this just for fun, or is there something more that can come of this, right? So I hope that that's helpful. Interesting stuff. I met a lot of people from 83 who have that Venus retrograde. And you guys are just, some of you guys are just used to having drama in relationships. And so a lot of it is learning to kind of undo that and being like, no, we don't have to have that, and not assuming things always. Anyway, I hope that that's helpful for you. All right. So let's see. I think I have Alyssa. Do I have your question, Alyssa? Let's see. And then we'll have Silk, Diana, and Austin. Ben says, I met someone with oppositions to nearly everything, every notable reversal. His Mars and Moon opposed my Moon and Taurus. His Sun, Mercury opposition, compelling, but he was taken. Opposites attract. So Alyssa, oops, I have you here, March 20th, 91 at 1:21 p.m. Leo rising. Hold on, let me see if it's in here. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Come on. PayPal kicked me out. Give me just a second. Hold on. Let's see if I can find it. There we go. I've been watching you for a long time. I appreciate your work. Thank you. Huge stuff is happening. My question is about my career and location. Definitely needing a change or a move. Currently a musician and a teacher. Pluto's about to conjunct my Saturn in the 7th, and I've been holding my breath. Please advise. Okay, so career and location. Okay, so she's a Leo rising. Her sun is in Pisces and her moon is in Taurus. Yeah, there's stuff happening. There is stuff happening here. Where do I begin? Well, first of all, I'm going to start with the sun because the sun rules your chart. So Neptune is in conjunction with your sun now. So there's a lot of like, where am I going? What is my purpose? What is the direction? You recently had a solar eclipse on your midheaven with a Mercury retrograde. So work stuff is on the horizon. There is a change that is coming. As all that's happening on your midheaven, it's opposing your 4th house where the South Node has been. So it is kind of saying, well, you're going into a new direction career-wise. It can be impacting your home. Your home is ruled by Venus. And Pluto, as it's approaching your descendant, totally radically changing relationships, it is squaring Venus. So it's like, okay, changes are happening in terms of how I relate to other people, especially in regards to relationships and home, because everything is really kind of prioritizing the changes with your career. She says, I'm going on my first tour in 2 weeks. Okay, so interesting. I kind of feel like it's so good to be a Leo rising right now with the Jupiter-Uranus stuff and like the next month and a half, all the planets going through your 10th house. It's really about all eyes being on you. I think that the home stuff you're going to want to watch when you have some transits outside of the square to Pluto, to Venus. So for example, when Mars starts coming into conjunction with Venus, that may be providing you with an opportunity in regards to a home or a living situation change. This is kind of mid-June. Granted, while that happens, it's also squaring Pluto. So it's like you're learning to base where you're living more so off of what's conducive for your career, not necessarily your relationships. So you're having to kind of put your career first, and relationships are kind of getting checked in the process, unfortunately. Uranus is getting ready to hit your moon as well. So that's also about, unexpected changes going on with the home and the living situation. There could be a lot of, touring or sleeping on friends' couches or, renting spaces with friends and kind of having communal living situation until you figure something out. And then finally, I really feel like there's going to be more clarity about what's actually happening with your living situation in August. And the reason why I say this is because you're going to see Mercury, which rules your 3rd house, go retrograde, and it will come into conjunction with Venus, which means like you may have a friend offer you a place to stay or say, hey, you can come live with me, or, do you want to like shack up together in August while you start to see Venus retrograde with Mercury. Okay, this is about a friend or a change in a living situation because of that. And then you will also see another turning point will be when Mars goes into Leo, and this is going to be a really colorful time. So you're going to want to pay attention to November, December, and January because Mars will actually retrograde right along your ascendant, which means you're changing direction in some situation. Perhaps taking space either from a friend or a partner and feeling the pressure to make changes with what's best for your career. Man, I mean, having that retrograde while simultaneously Uranus is conjunct your moon, invest more in good friendships, not necessarily relationships. That's the best advice I can give you, because you're going to have friends that are going to be like, I've got a place for you, or like, come and stay with me for a while until you figure out where you want to land. This opposition to Pluto and Saturn makes me feel like it's going to be really difficult to have a settled relationship in a home situation, that there's like tension there. Now, Aquarius is friends. So if you're living with somebody for a while or staying in a place with a friend and then you're like, stuff's getting weird, November, December, January can be like an undoing pattern. Let's talk positive though, right? The positive is that there is a huge focus with both of these squares between Mars and Pluto to be like, I have to focus on my music, Venus in the 10th. I have to focus on my reputation. I have to make sure I'm out and I'm being seen, and I can't get sucked into either a living situation or a relationship that is like holding me hostage. Like it wants to keep you from doing that, basically. And I think the eclipse was saying that as well. Chiron on the midheaven is like really focusing on, healing your relationship to your career and your status, and that is the most important thing. Jupiter's in your 11th house all year, where you're growing, you're connecting with friends, you're socializing. It's conjuncting your Mars, which also means that you'll have opportunities to create, collaborate with other people. and maybe play some fun venues, some bars, some other places that you've always wanted to go and visit. And it will also open up the door for relationships. Pluto is coming into your 7th house next year. And so there is this feeling of being like, making a decision about, well, are we friends or are we something more? You know, is there a third party influence? Because you got Pluto that's going to hit a 3. And then Pluto is actually going to come into conjunction with Saturn. So it looks like actually the first 6 months of next year is a lot of back and forth between either a friendship in a living situation or a relationship in a living situation. And I really recommend not making any major decisions until June. You have to prioritize what's going on with your career first before you try to figure some of that stuff out. But it's all exciting, I think, with Uranus on your moon. You're like, I'm going places I haven't gone before, and like I feel like I need spontaneity and I need freedom. And the more that you're kind of playing into that, especially because it's trining your North Node, of, you know, improvising and making changes in terms of where you're working and how you're working, and developing better skills when it comes to you know, your craft. That's really where you're going to want to focus. Yeah, there's something going on. Whenever Pluto hits the descendant at a 3, I'm like, there's like a third party that gets involved, or like you're dating somebody, but you're waiting for somebody else to become available, or like, you know, you're in love with your best friend, or like there's something weird like that happens. So just keep in mind, like that cat and mouse game, like the back and forth is going to happen until next spring. So don't feel like you need to make any life-changing decisions where you're sacrificing something for another person if you or they are not ready yet, basically. Without spilling all of your tea. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Seen way too many of those situations, let me tell you. Good luck, Alyssa. We've got Silk, Diana, and then Austin. Thank you. All right, so let's see. Yoga with Silk. All right, Silk. What is to come in terms of love and marriage timing? The question I get asked the most. Well, let's just look at your chart, first of all. 7th house is relationships. You got a sun there at 22, so that can be a feeling of delays with some of these things. Venus is in the 7th house, that's great, but the moon rules your relationship house, and it's in Aquarius. So basically, a couple things. When you have the moon ruling the 7th house, and it's in the second, you want to feel committed or chosen, or, you know, in something solid with another person. Even though it's in Aquarius, there's a sense of being like, I want something solid. I want to be chosen. You know, I want commitment. Your moon squares Pluto, so it does mean that there can be a sense of learning to work through feelings in regards to being chosen, and whether or not that's a healthy way of looking at relationships, and not feeling like you're going into things because you like the idea of a relationship. You're doing it because you're actually liking the person, and it's like a healthy dynamic, right? When you see some significant aspects or transits to your natal moon, that's when you'll see relationship stuff kind of happen. So you're born in 1995, so you're coming up on turning 29 this year. So you're going to be in a Mercury year, which means you could meet somebody at work or at a gym or while you're going for a walk, or you meet them, you know, in some way like that, because Mercury is in your 7th house. Basically, everything comes full circle when you turn 30, because when you turn 30, which will be obviously next year, this is when you're going to have your 7th house year, which is ruled by the moon. So could marriage or engagement be happening next year? Maybe. So I'll give you some of the time periods that I think are most significant. So probably for me, what I'm thinking about right now is that Uranus is coming into a square with your moon opposed Pluto. So I would avoid situationships like the plague, like if it's not defined about what you're looking for, or that you guys are or not friends, this can get really sticky as it opposes Pluto and squares the moon. So it's like, are you choosing me? Are you not? Are we friends? Or are we not? What are we doing? The 11th house is also other people's lovers, okay? So this can represent where there is some tension, where you're like, I'm seeing somebody, I like them. Are they keeping their options open? What's going on? And that's all going to square your moon, where you're going to be like, well, I want you, they can't have you. And it can cause some real drama. Just word to the wise. You'll see that on and off all this year. The other thing that I think about is when planets trine your moon. So for example, Jupiter is going to be in Gemini this year. It's going to be moving into your whole sign 6th, which is about health and wellness. It might mean getting a second job. It might mean you pick a new gym. It may mean that you are connecting with people like locally, and it's improving the ability to relate to other people. You'll see that trine more so next year. So that's going to be closer to here. Okay, so that'll be in the spring. And then the other timeline that comes up for me also that's a bit of like working something out is going to be when you have the Mars retrograde. So Mars will go into Cancer where it does not perform very well because it's kind of moody, and it will retrograde. So you're going to start seeing the effects of this by about September. Here's the pros. Mars going in the 7th house can bring a lot of opportunity to connect with somebody, especially a man. Something can kind of heat up very quickly. You're going to have Mars conjunct your Mercury, so you're going to meet them either through work or through some kind of health endeavor, or maybe you're connecting with them. They offer you a service, and then you start kind of talking. And then Mars will also hit your Venus and your Sun. So it's definitely a passionate time, September of this year. But when Mars goes retrograde in the 7th house, we are reevaluating, potentially undoing, disconnecting, reassessing what's going on in a relationship and our goals. So you have to keep in mind that December into like February, it's the jury's still out as to what's going to happen. Now, when you get to March, it goes direct. It will be trining Saturn, where it looks like you're having your Saturn's return. You're going to have much more serious conversations about relationships in the spring. And my interpretation is that when you turn 30, which will be next summer, and then Jupiter goes into your 7th house, you will either be in the relationship and be talking about commitment or engagement, or you will actually meet someone. And likely with the North Node on your Saturn and with Jupiter in your 7th house trine, there will be a significant relationship next summer, which is leading to that. Jupiter in the 7th house is great, especially when it's exalted and you're in your 7th house here. By the end of, I would say, that year, so it's going to run July of 25 to 26, most likely you will meet your partner. Getting married, in astrology, if you have a kid, you have a dog, you have a plant, you live together, you're married. The actual ceremony is the 9th house. So you're going to be having eclipses in the 9th house, and it can mean that you meet somebody through the 7th house, and then, you're having these eclipses that are going to be in Virgo, and there's, discussions about that. So, you're going to have one in March of 25, and you're going to have another one that looks like it's going to be September of 2025. So my money's kind of on summer into fall of 2025 personally. But because you have so many positive planets in your 7th house, that Jupiter transit most likely will bring a partner for you next year. Okay, I hope that that's helpful for you. I like playing the "Where's my partner" game. That's always fun. All right, so we've got Diana, and then Austin and Christine. And let's see. I think we're getting to a round where I have to kind of put people in. Let's see, 82292. Okay, so after Diana, you're welcome. Don't worry, somebody's going to come through with that transit. It's just taking a little bit time. When you have your Sun in the 7th, there's a bit of a delay there. Okay, so after Diana, so for like Austin, Christine, Stephanie, and Gabriella and Sarah, I'm going to put your guys' charts in. So I'll take a brief break to put those in. All right, so we've got Diana here. And I've got you here August 22nd, 92. And she says, if I go from being a YouTube filming, if I go for being YouTuber filming makeup tutorials, will it work out? Cool, good question. All right, so some food for thought. I'm not a fan of whole signs, but to me this kind of makes sense. So stay with me here. Number one is, as a Sag rising, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is in Taurus. So you're going to hear that it's in your 6th house of daily routine. This is skills. This is services, right? This is also health. This can also be about some new kind of job. Taurus is beauty. So this conjunction is really good for you. However, it's happening in your 5th house, which is my talents, my platform, my stage, what I'm showing the world. So I think that in itself is pretty clear to me that like this is beginning. I like that this is happening simultaneously with some trines to your Uranus and Neptune, which is about aesthetics and style. It can be about filming things and something that's unique. I also like that you're doing this while you're having eclipses on your midheaven, which is saying I want to kind of give up an old identity, but I still want to kind of play with beauty and things that are kind of like, you know, connected to cosmetics, Libra, and trying to do more work closer to home. Right? So it's all there, especially when you hear like the Sag rising horoscopes, like the eclipses and the retrogrades and stuff in the 5th house. How can I create something and be more entrepreneurial? How can I do something that's going to be, you know, brand new, that's going to be exciting, and it's about, you know, showcasing my talent. Aries is also like the face, you know? Then I think about how Jupiter is going to come into conjunction with your moon and Mars. And the moon can help you make money because it's your 8th house lord. Mars can be about, you know, creative endeavors and making a second income that can come in from home. Obviously, the 6th house is busy and it's about multitasking. So it kind of represents that you're going to be having to do this for a while. And possibly this is about reaching, you know, monetization goals and like, you know, like literally learning how to like perfect and work with apps and posting things and like editing things, because that can be very Gemini. Media platforms as well. So there might be more than one. You have a YouTube channel, but you're creating shorts, and then, you know, you're focusing on creating like a separate like website or something else that's going to kind of cross pollinate. This is all going to come into conjunction, and it's going to square Saturn in Pisces in the 3rd house. So this is going to be about consistency, timing, being on top of filming and lighting and all those other things. Like nobody realizes, like, I don't think people realize like how much work it is to be a YouTuber. Like people think that it's like really easy, and I can tell you it's not, and it only gets harder as the years go by to reach that, you know, subscriber count, or to hit the monetization, and then to maintain the audience, and then to make sure that you're consistent. Like consistency in doing everything on time is key. When I think of like Pisces in the 3rd, 4th house, it's like you're going to have a designated space, and you're going to have to understand lighting. Pisces is about lighting and film. And so I think with Jupiter square is you're either having to learn the skills or hire somebody to help you with it, and also create the designated time. Jupiter, when it squares Saturn in August and December, you can get kind of frustrated and be like, is this growing enough? Am I not doing enough? You know, what can I be doing? I told everybody this is about shorter form content, because Jupiter in Gemini has a short attention span, and the square to Saturn is about visibility and, you know, being seen and being heard. So you're going to want to make sure that you're doing shorter things, and also like paying attention to creating the necessary amount of time to be able to do this work and dedicating yourself to it. Likely you will find, if you stay with it though, when you have the eclipse that's going to be in the fall. Okay, so that's going to be, let's see, this one. I'm looking at this one. In Libra, you will have a solar eclipse in Libra conjunct your midheaven with a Mercury Cazimi, which means you may have like a breakthrough where you're bringing in now clients, or maybe you're getting sponsorship from makeup companies, you're kind of getting paid for advertising. Like there can be some announcement about some kind of partnership, and you may have a breakthrough right around October of next year. But with Venus ruling your midheaven, with your natal Venus being in Virgo conjunct Jupiter, you're like, I want to teach people. I think the challenge is not just teaching people, but finding ways to be able to bring in other resources through that, you know, being a YouTuber. So I think it's going to be like sponsorships or collaborating with other brands. She says, I don't like my Gemini moon. I give up on things too quickly. Well, but it's in a Leo degree. So if it's fun and if it's creative, you like it. And I really feel like you need an interaction with other people, because your moon belongs to the 7th house. So you would want to do videos where you're talking to somebody about what they want, and then you do like a time lapse, or you're doing a YouTube video with another, you know, makeup artist, and you guys are talking about what brands you like, or maybe you decide I'm going to do that, but we also have like a podcast. You need some other kind of relational aspect, I think, to keep you going, basically, right? Even your Venus and your Jupiter is at a 19. So you need some kind of collaboration with another person. Or maybe you take people's questions about, well, how do I do this with my eyes? Or what do I do this if I have aging skin? Or what products do you recommend for that? that Venus-Jupiter means that you're a perfectionist at your craft. You're really good at what you do. So I think it's going to be about helping find solutions to people's beauty issues, or, you know, makeup questions, or you do like a Q&A. Like, you need something interactive that's going to set you apart and make you different from other content creators. I think that's the angle that I would go at. And I really feel like you've got some things that are working in your favor, trying to help you set up to do more work from home, if that's something that you potentially would like to do, with like Saturn and Neptune kind of going through your third house. But Saturn's going to square your Mars and your Moon. So keep in mind that this is going to square this, so it will take time away from other people, or, you know, you're going to have to make time in your schedule while you're balancing another job. And it's going to oppose your Venus and your Jupiter, which means you're going to have to be working at this all year. Been there, done that. I was not a fan of YouTube, admittingly. Did not want to be on YouTube. Ended up kind of going back and being like, okay, I made videos that I really liked doing, and now I'm going to do it more consistently. You hit about year 1 and you kind of hit your stride if you're consistent, and you're like, wow, look at the growth. And if you can stay with it for that long and you start to see how much it's growing, there's something really awesome about getting to that point and being like, okay, now I want to keep going, right? So, you know, really, it's not about competing with other people. It's going to be more about competing, I think, with yourself, if that makes sense, and seeing how you can keep one-upping what you're doing and create content that's different from other people. Try to make it collaborative, because it seems like that's kind of the move for some of your transits. Anyway, I hope that that's helpful for you. Good luck with that. Make sure you plug your channel if you haven't already started it. It helps having help with some of the experience. Yeah, that's husband wanting credit where credit is definitely due. I've got Austin, Christine, Stephanie. All of you guys are up next. Let me see. Some of your guys' questions are not popping up. I don't know why. So let me see what's going on here. So give me a second. I got to plug these charts in, and then we will finish up this last batch of people. You're welcome. I love watching all like the makeup tutorial stuff. Those are my favorite. All right, so we've got Austin that wants a Sinistry. Let's see, is this the same person? No, okay. So that's this one. And then let's see. So we've got Austin in. Christine. Stephanie. Let's see, Gabriella. I'm laughing at these images. It's ridiculous. All right, and then we have Sarah. We will take Austin. All right, so I've got you guys. Thanks for your patience. All right, so I've got Austin here, June 6, 94. And let's look at his question. I keep waiting to see gators, guys. I haven't seen any gators yet. I'm waiting. All right, so I've got Austin here, June 6, 94, and he's asking questions about another person who is born December 22nd, 99. And he says, hey, Candace, glad to see you're still at it. My question today is about the relationship with my partner of a year. Last week, I told my boss of 5 years that I was switching career paths to pursue a different one with my partner. We both work in the film union and will be the same department now. We're doing awesome at work and making a real impact on people in our workplace in a great way. I feel life is being drowned out by work. Intimately connecting and being vulnerable feels tough. She's very affected by my moods, and I'm trying my best to stay lighthearted with this heavy Saturn return. What's in store for us? I can't wait till the Saturn return is over. Thank you for everything. I feel you on that. I feel you on that. Saturn returns are definitely big turning points. Okay, so a couple things, just some food for thought. You know, part of what you're going to be experiencing, and it's in your natal chart, right? So you've got Sun square Saturn. So Saturn in the third house, communication, you know, fourth house can be whole sign Pisces. So I think it's communication, expression of feelings, and also like what you're building for your foundation and how that does require you to make some changes in your relationships or how you're communicating with other people. Something like that seems to be kind of factored into your Saturn return. It's like, how do I better communicate and connect with a partner? How do I explain to other people that I'm making changes at work? You know, Uranus is also sitting on your South Node. So it's about freeing yourself from the day-to-day grind and the willingness to kind of say, okay, I'm focusing more on what I'm building with another person. So you're kind of born for this. You will see Jupiter going into Gemini, you know, in June. This is going to bring an enhancement of relationship stuff, and it can be communication, it can be traveling. You know, yes, you'll see Jupiter square Saturn, but I feel like this is much more positivity revolving around relationships, and this is about you being like, yes, I want more togetherness, and we're working through things and learning how to kind of work through some of these moods that come with Saturn and Pisces. So just for what it's worth. Uranus in the South Node is also, I think, feeling like, okay, I'm going solo, or I'm doing something that's going to be more independent, and like that being challenging because there's like no routine. And being a Sag rising with all that Taurus, like you like consistency and you like routine and you like knowing that something is solid. And so that's kind of being ripped from out underneath you right now, right? Saturn will trine your Venus this year. So it's about being vulnerable and communicating with a partner and talking more about what you're building. Okay, so there's some positive stuff here. It's Uranus opposed Pluto that's giving you some trouble. And that can be creating, because there is no sense of stability and routine, feeling kind of moody, right? I've personally experienced somebody having Uranus going through their 6th house and them being unemployed and making changes in their routine and all kinds of stuff. And the opposition to Pluto was a lot of like just needing space to kind of process things. And then finally kind of getting into the swing of things. So really what you need is a partner who's very communicative and supportive and like encouraging you to, you know, communicate even when it's difficult. When we look at the Sinistry between you and your partner, okay, let's see. So let's look at her chart. So December 22nd, 1999. 1:48 a.m. So she's a Libra rising, okay, and she's having eclipses happening in her 1st and 7th house. So for example, this recent eclipse that she had on her 7th house cusp was with Chiron, so wounding relationship issues, partner going through stuff that they need to heal. Mercury's retrograde, so kind of like somebody who's not communicating very efficiently or having some kind of breakthrough or breakdown in terms of personal changes. And, you know, she is experiencing Uranus squaring her Mars. So Uranus is in her 8th house and it's squaring Mars, which rules relationships. So it's basically saying the pressure of merging together, making money, all of that stuff, and the pressure that that's creating within relationships and within a home or a personal environment. Do you guys live together? You know, because that can be kind of creating some friction in relationships as well. 4th house is her home, her emotions and her feelings, but it's her partner's career. So this means through her partner becoming more independent with finances and also making changes within their career, it's creating some friction as well. And so that's even coming through her chart, right? Uranus has also been in opposition to her Venus. So you've got somebody who definitely is a little bit hot and cold or back and forth with relationships. That does put her in a position of being like, am I solid? Am I not solid? What's going on? And then this stuff in the 7th house is a lot of relationship stuff getting worked out. You know, a lot of Libra risings have been having issues in relationships the last couple months with the retrograde, the eclipse, and Chiron. And it's been showing where other parties, you know, from her perspective, it's like, that's their shit. That's not their shit. So Libra risings are starting to look around being like, okay, I'm getting frustrated because my partner is not communicating effectively, or they're being selfish, or they're being impulsive, or they're acting out, or they're being kind of short-tempered. So that's her experience, right? Through conflict, though, there can be opportunities to kind of work through it. And maybe it's about you having more freedom. So if you live together, you work together, it's like, well, what else do you need to be doing? In her chart, it says her partner needs to be doing more independently. And areas can be working out, fitness, having their own hobbies. It can be that some of this stuff that's coming up is because they're not getting any space, you know? Watch what happens when Mars comes through there. Be really careful, because that can be where there can be some arguments that can get kind of tricky, and you're either working together, working out together, you know, doing something active. Thankfully, it's all on her Jupiter. So it is about communication. And if you guys can be communicating and working through these things, you know, you guys can talk about how you can be able to kind of build something together. So it sounds like there's like a lot of like just feeling very intertwined, and maybe perhaps that's part of, it's kind of difficult. You know, Aries is about identity, right? Anyway, just some food for thought. So, you know, putting the two together and seeing what's going on with Sinistry, I mean, there's a lot of stuff here. I think part of it is the fact that you've got somebody who has Pluto and Mercury on your ascendant. And that can be, on one case, really great because you speak the same language and she understands where you're coming from, and you guys can think big with, you know, that Jupiter kind of Sagittarian energy. Sometimes she takes words out of your mouth. She can kind of read your mind, but there can also be this really intense kind of exchange that can happen. And her Mercury opposes, you know, your sun, and Pluto opposes your sun. So it means that there is this sense of polarity. It's like there's this and there's that. But like, look at your chart. Having the sun in the 7th house oppose your ascendant means that opposites can attract, but also they need their own space. They need to have their own things that they're doing. They have their own beliefs, or they have their own interests. Really difficult to have somebody who has Pluto on your ascendant because there's a major attraction there, but the opposition to your sun is like, it can be too much sometimes. Saturn is conjunct Mars, okay? And so Mars represents your privacy, your freedom, behind the scenes, your own bedroom. I mean, literally, I know this sounds crazy, but like, you may actually need to sleep in separate bedrooms every now and then, not because you need space, but Mars represents your sleep. It's either that or you need your own private creative space. So it's like you need your own office, or you need your own studio, or you need somewhere that's like a cave, right? Pluto represents caves where you can kind of hide. So you can go and have your space. You can kind of cool, calm, and collect with Pluto on the North Node, where you can kind of process things and then come out of your space and then you're good. But that Saturn on your Mars means it limits something about your private time or about, you know, your creative process. Difficult aspect to have. Sun and Moon conjunction, beautiful. You guys are kind of on the same page. You got Venus and Jupiter in close proximity. You both have Mercury in opposition to each other's sun. You know, so it's like you speak a different, you guys speak different languages, basically. You know, what is Mercury in Cancer? Soft-spoken, emotional, sensitive. It opposes
her sun, which is more business minded. Where are we going? What are we doing? And sometimes, you know, you're very sensitive and very emotional, and she can be very between the eyes and really direct. Being a Capricorn with Mercury conjunct Pluto, it's like, no, this is how it needs to be done. You can kind of get your feelings hurt. Or she has a tendency, because she's got a Saturn energy, to be like, we just work through things. This is what we do. And you're like, no, that's not how I work. So a little bit of space can be good. It can definitely benefit things. And I think the Libra, you know, the Libra risings are experiencing that. But also, as a Sagittarius rising, you know, Jupiter going into the 7th house might mean you start seeing some of these things in her as well. It might be that she's like, I'm taking a trip out of town for a day or two. I'm spending time with my sister. You know, I'm doing other things. And Jupiter square Saturn means that's a good thing. You guys can still stay together and take some time apart and do other things. Or maybe she's working on other partnerships and giving you some space to breathe. Even in a relationship where you live with somebody, if you have Saturn in the 4th house, there's going to be this feeling of being alone or needing alone time or needing time to reflect. At a 12 in the 3rd house, it's like you need to be somewhere, or maybe it's going for a walk, going for a drive, you need to be journaling, other things to help you process stuff and have an outlet, so there's not so much friction kind of going on within the relationship, in my opinion. She's going to have a pretty big turning point next year with Saturn and Neptune, you know, going into Aries. It won't be in her 7th house. I think it's going to be more about working more independently with a partner. But there is going to be other activations and retrogrades, which is going to be kind of like a big decision about what's going on in a relationship next spring. Her Saturn is also in her 7th house. So as she comes into her Saturn return, she's going to be learning more about relationships. It's retrograde, so it's karmic. It belongs to her 8th household sign, so it's about some joint business. It opposes Venus. So I'm not saying to put the cart before the horse and have conversations about, okay, so we build a business together, we're working together. What if we don't stay together? What do we do? But in her chart, that does seem to be something that comes up. That's like, okay, if we're building something, you know, she's got the kind of chart of somebody who would build something and then go, well, we stay together because because we built this together, right? She's very committed in that sense. And you don't want to do that. The other thing is that Mars, when it goes retrograde at the end of the year, will be on her North Node. That's about a reevaluation of a relationship and a working business with her partnership. If you want to diffuse some of this now, you're going to start creating more of your own lives, even though you stay together, and whether this is hobbies, friendships, socializing, whatever, to start diffusing this. Because when Mars goes retrograde over her North Node, ruled by the Sun, it's going to be her having conversations with a partner that's like, is this working? Is this not working? You know, if it's not working, then like, what do we need to do? Do we salvage the business? Do we salvage the relationship? And you will see what I'm talking about. This is going to start in December, and it's going to be a lot. Because it will go retrograde and it will oppose Pluto. So it'll be like, okay, I can't work and live like this. And that can be what's happening. So you want to prevent that if at all possible by seeing the signs now and being like, okay, we need to be doing some other things. For her, you know, personally, it's going to be quite intense because it will make all these oppositions, and it might mean that one of the two of you says, hey, I'm going to take these side gigs, or maybe we're working in the business together, but working in two completely different projects. Because this is going to ignite quite a significant square in her chart. And Saturn, which is in her 7th house, is going to be the deciding factor. It's like something going on within a relationship and like making money together. I think it's a good idea to kind of have your own things. You know, I think it's a good idea if you're building this business, yes, build the business, but either one of you guys might take side projects or other things, so you're not feeling like you're completely enmeshed in that sense. That might be the solution. But you may find yourself, if you're still in this relationship, coming back to this, you know, at the end of this year and reassessing based off of what decisions you guys have made in terms of your professional stuff. Is the Sinistry good? Yeah, but you have to understand that you guys communicate differently. Having Mercury in opposition to each other's suns means actually I would be studying each other's Mercuries to better, excuse me, to understand each other and better communicate, right? So I hope that that's helpful in giving you some insight. Let's see, who else do I have? All right, so we have Christine, and we're going to be looking at you and your husband. And Stephanie and Gabriella and Sarah, you guys are next. You're welcome. Good luck. I hope that that's helpful. That's definitely a lot. You guys are doing all that stuff together. All right. So for you, Gary and Christine, what's up? Any good luck on signing a business project, working overseas, and how the transit affects our marriage status as we're both Libra risings? Well, being that you guys are both Libra risings, the eclipses in your 7th house, the retrograde is about reassessing relationships with other people. Mercury rules 9th house of, foreign, kind of connections. And the 12th house is about like contracts and exchanges and things. So it makes perfect sense. I'm looking at your guys' composite chart of the two charts together. So together you have a Scorpio rising, Sun in Cancer, and your moon is in Aries. So signing a business project, most likely with the retrograde in the 7th, there's been some delays there in, being able to kind of work everything out or make some kind of commitment or get other people to kind of get back to you in a timely manner. 7th house is relationships, partnerships, and you have Venus going into your composite 7th house. And we want to see Venus making some kind of an aspect with Mercury. And so Venus is coming into a sextile with Mercury now. Okay, so that can be about some kind of commitment or merger or, partnership. And then we want to see Venus coming into conjunction with Jupiter, okay, in transit or in the chart. Well, look at this. Jupiter's about to hit Venus. And then transiting Venus is about to hit Jupiter. So you're in it, basically. Most likely, you're going to see this happening after the new moon. So let's say from May 7th through about the 19th. And then if not then right around the 22nd, when we have a full moon in Sagittarius in your guys' 2nd house of money and resources, ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is conjunct Venus in the 7th. So right around basically mid-May to this full moon, I could definitely see some kind of partnership. It's, these are two transits. This is one. You're also going to see at the time the sextile to Saturn. So this can be about some business that you guys kind of have together. Also, Venus conjunct Jupiter in the 7th house is great for your marriage. It can be that you have a breakthrough financially and you guys are kind of indulging more, spending more together, enjoying the finer things in life. There is definitely a lot of working together and a lot of partnership going on that's happening here. The one thing that you want to keep in mind is that Uranus is getting very close to your guys' composite Venus. But I think this is going to be more about diversifying your investments and your assets because it belongs to your 8th. And I also think with Jupiter going into the 8th house, there could be like a second income stream that's coming in, or you're reinvesting the money that you're making. And then something else to think about where I would definitely just pay a little bit more attention to what's going on with your marriage is when Mars goes into Taurus and it squares Pluto. So there can be a little bit of a tension here in mid-June. It's more communication based than anything, and like who's doing what, for the business, and whether or not you guys are actually, really kind of sticking to what your kind of committed responsibilities are within the business. This is around June 10th. And then when Mars comes in conjunction with Uranus, there can also be a little bit of like friction here as well. And that's going to be right around July 12th through the 15th. And what's interesting is that while Mars Uranus can kind of cause some friction, it is in your whole sign 8th and Jupiter's there. So it could be, some sexual stuff going on, and Mars will come into conjunction with Venus. So if you guys are fighting, trying to find a way to blow off steam in other ways and not argue and make love, if you kind of catch my drift. The North Node's also coming into conjunction with your moon. So that's very passionate. It's in the 5th house. It's about having fun. It's about making time for romance. It's about going and getting active or finding ways to be more assertive when it comes to your romantic life and doing things you haven't done before. I like the North Node in Aries in the 5th house for like going to sporting events or like boxing events or working out together. It could be great for competitive games. So you guys might have like, you're doing like chess night or like other things that you're kind of playing against each other, and you can kind of, get a little feisty and competitive. That can be fun as well. The moon does rule the 9th house, so it can be saying that it's prompting you guys to travel or looking at foreign investment in real estate, or maybe you're talking about planning a vacation, like something like that can kind of be coming up for you in July as well. And you're also going to be seeing, like I said, Jupiter hanging out in your 8th house this year, so that's great for extra resources, income, things like that, making money together, merging your money in some way, or playing much more of an active role in talking about what you want to, how you want to be making your money grow. So there can be some discussions about investments or making changes in accounts. It'll be more next year, you know, as Uranus is coming into conjunction with your Venus, that there could be some changes, but I think it's more relating to your home and maybe where you're living or how you're investing your money. And that's going to be, you know, taking place for you May of next year. Too much work and trip. We just got back from a work trip. Well, I mean, you guys can definitely be doing both. You've got Sun and Mercury, you know, in Cancer on the cusp of your 9th house. Work and travel kind of makes sense there, you know. I think the one thing that I would really focus on is making time to have fun. You know, the eclipses in your 5th house and the nodal transits in the 5th house is like, we work a lot, but, you know, we need to have fun. And yeah, I mean, I think, you know, work can cause tension here. You know, you've got the retrograde that's been happening on your South Node in the 6th house, which is like, you know, it can be too much work, too much togetherness. There could be too much assertiveness that's kind of going on. And like, yeah, Uranus getting close to Venus, there can definitely be some upsets. But this is at a 28, so it more makes me feel like it's about pressure in the home or around home or family situations or, you know, home dynamics, or, you know, whether or not somebody's like, I need out of the house for a little bit, that can definitely happen as well. But I'm not seeing anything that's like super detrimental to the marriage per se. I just feel like definitely people need different things when Uranus comes into conjunction with Venus. We can get kind of like impatient with one another and we feel like we need to go and do other things. I would more watch the beginning of August for changes at work, and you're going to have to figure out how to navigate those changes, you know, put your heads together and figure out if the changes are happening because you have new work partnerships or something of that nature. And you'll see the same thing happen at the end of the year as well with the Mars retrograde. You guys are reworking or reimagining the kind of work that you're doing in some way, shape, or form. And these eclipses that have been in Libra and Aries have been kind of showing you guys where there can be, once again, too much togetherness. That is a theme of Aries and Libra, is there been too much togetherness and where do we need more independence? So I feel like this can be about either working on, you know, work stuff separately and like not always having to do things together, or learning how to create time where you can kind of be doing stuff apart so that way you're more appreciative of like when you guys are actually kind of coming together. And in terms of like health and stuff, you know, the retrograde and the eclipse has been in the 6th house of health. So it's been about developing healthier habits on an individual level. If anything, Mars now in Aries, I think is going to be about being more health-minded or more health-conscious and like being more proactive when it comes to health. And Mars hitting your moon is definitely going to be a theme here. I think it's about finding fun ways to stay active and healthy. 5th house. And this will be May 14th. Watch with Mars conjunct Chiron. There can be needing to heal wounds or overcoming something or healing something around like the 26th or the 28th. But once you get out of that period, it kind of eases up a little bit as Mars starts to separate from Chiron as well as the South Node. Chiron on your South Node can be about where you guys are working too much, right? Because it's opposing Saturn. It's like, where is this getting in the way of like home or family things? Or like, where are we not getting stuff done on the home base because we're so immersed with work? That can be something else that's coming up for you guys. And, you know, sometimes when you have transits in the 6th house, you're like, it's worth getting a house cleaner or, you know, getting an assistant or hiring, you know, some staff to help you kind of pick up some of the slack of like where you guys are doing way more than you really should be doing, you know? But Jupiter's going into Gemini in this next, you know, couple of months, and that's going to bring more resources. And then next year it'll be conjunct your Sun and Mercury. So it's really good for business. So whatever changes you're making this year, you're actually really going to see that, I think, manifest in a positive way for you, especially like kind of like spring and summer 2025. So I hope that's helpful for you. We've got Stephanie. Let's see. Want to make sure this was the right one. I'm pretty sure this is the right one. What's up, Stephanie? What was, let me see, your question, because it did not pop up for me. There we go. All right, so we've got, nope, that's not her. Wrong chart. There we go, June. Okay. So June 30th, 83. Libra rising, Sun in Cancer, Moon in Pisces. I'm waiting to hear back on 3 different jobs. 1 in New York. I'm currently in LA. Can you please look into them and any love that might be coming in? I mean, let me put it this way. There's a little bit of like 2 things at the same time. For Cancer, the eclipses, the retrogrades, all that stuff is 10th house to your sun. So it's going to be about who am I working with, what's going on at work, what am I choosing between 1 or 2, right? Back and forth, back and forth. And the retrograde has been delaying that process. When you see a transit to your moon, that's going to really expand something going on with your career. I would watch the fact that there's still back and forth with work. That's going to be happening at the end of this year with the Mars retrograde. From a Libra rising perspective, you know, the eclipse and the retrograde has been, well, do I approach somebody? Do I not? There's somebody I'm interested in. You know, do I reach out to them? Is there a connection there? You know, could it be more? The fact that Mars is going into the 7th house can prompt the opportunity for a relationship to develop, definitely. But I'm also watching Neptune now squaring Mars. So it's like there's some confusion about, well, you know, am I going to get rejected? Are they interested in me? You know, could it be something like, and there is this sense of, with Neptune kind of questioning or like doubting that process. I personally feel like now that Saturn is off your moon, and you're starting to now see planets that are going to be coming into Cancer this summer in your career zone and, you know, trining Saturn, it's looking to me like you're going to have an opportunity to really focus on career. Moving and relocating, you're going to have to ask yourself, is that something that you're willing to do? Because if that's going to happen, I would see this be happening more like either around the full moon in Capricorn, the first one, there will be 2, but the first one around the end of June or the second one around the end of July. Those 2, because they're within your fourth and 10th house axis of work and home, are likely going to be the times where you would take something and make a change. Right? So it depends on where you want to live. Like until you have a really strong Saturn transit, you know, Saturn will be trining the sun. So if you have a solid offer, you would move. But I also feel like it's going to be a big overhaul because you're going to have this full moon in June conjunct Pluto. So it's like you could do it, but it's going to be a pretty big thing to kind of like overcome. Jupiter says that you're much more likely to be trying to do some kind of hybrid where you're like working for a place in another location, but you're working at a distance with the possibility of maybe moving in the future, or that you're working and you're traveling and going back and forth between 2 places with Jupiter in your 9th house. But you don't have anything that's hindering your moon. If anything, Jupiter is about to square your moon, which means there may be more than one opportunity or more than one offer. And that kind of comes up for you in July. End of June, early July. So Jupiter represents moving. It's in the 9th house of traveling, and it's squaring your moon, which is where you'd be working, right? Okay, so the moon will only be temporary. I would much rather you do traveling or a temporary move than something solid. And so when you see, like, for example, you know, the new moon in Taurus, right? Here we go, the new moon in Taurus, which is here. This could be about some offer coming in because it's in the 8th house and it's sextiling your 10th and it's also sextiling your moon. So I would assume sometime in May, you know, you could have an offer and then you could be like, okay, I'm doing something temporary or I'm, you know, traveling, but then there is going to be a sense of coming back or deciding whether or not you really want to move. You don't have any issues here with work. Things have been held back because of Saturn. There's been delays because Mars has been there. Now you're pretty much free to go. I don't really see anything that's keeping you from working. Down the road, you're going to start seeing eclipses that are going to be in Pisces. You know, the North Node's going to come into conjunction with Pisces. So you will see through those eclipses the next 2 years, you know, changes in location, changes with schedule, stuff like that. But I think that's going to start more so like spring of next year. And then when the North Node inevitably comes into conjunction with your moon, I think that's going to be a much more solid kind of schedule and work and location. That's all going to be kind of playing out in 2026. So flexibility seems to kind of, I think, be the theme with what's going on with these eclipses. And all my Cancer, Sun, Moon risings, this retrograde and eclipse season has been a back and forth. For you, though, I would really focus on, whatever you're agreeing to this year, to stay flexible, because I can see there's going to be another change that's going to come for you the beginning of 2025 with Mars retrograde in your 10th house trine Saturn. So you're still reevaluating or making tweaks or changes to the work and the work schedule that you're doing in the spring of next year, basically. But it's nice because Mars is going to trine Saturn, so you may be able to negotiate a raise, or maybe you get a better paying offer, and you're like, okay, somebody I used to work for is calling me to ask me to come back, and you might be able to negotiate something and actually, might really play into your favor with the trine to Saturn, especially if it did mean potentially relocating, and if it was a job that would be willing to help you pay for that, or be a better opportunity, you may consider doing it. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Toddman. I hope you get it, even if it is temporary. It looks like it'd be fun. Jupiter in the 9th house is having some extended opportunities for travel. A lot of Libra risings are going to be doing that in this next year. It's just a square to Saturn, different time zones maybe. You're trying to find ways to kind of navigate having much more of like a flexible schedule. That seems to be the theme. All right, you're welcome. I've got Gabriella and Sarah. All right, so let's see. Gabriella, did you have a particular question for me? I have you here April 22nd, 71, 9:45 a.m. in New York, New York. You have a Cancer rising, Sun in Taurus, and a Moon in Pisces. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Some of these messages aren't popping up in the memos, guys. I apologize. So let me know if you have a particular question. But just kind of looking at your chart here, you got a couple things going on. There she is. What's up with work and romance? Anything else you please share? All right. So to be honest with you, it's a little bit of both. So you're the moon because you're ruled, Cancer rising, and then relationships are Saturn. So you have Saturn approaching your moon. So this can be like, what is going on in terms of my status and my work, right? Very, very Saturn, and my relationships. You're going to find that there's more pivotal turning points in the spring. Like, I hate to kind of say that, but that's my interpretation. Saturn rules your 7th house of relationships, and the recent the recent Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which was bringing sudden opportunities for change, some kind of expansion, has been on your Saturn, which means it's been focusing more on what are your goals in relationships, and are you just going out there and trying to meet people without any feeling of needing to be locked into something. It wants you to be more social, it wants you to meet new people, it wants you to be more open to the idea of the way that you look at relationships beyond just romantic relationships, platonic relationships as well, the 11th house. That has been at a 22, so it also means that it takes work, or it takes time to make friends, meet people, get into relationships. It's been trining your Mars in the 7th. So friendships can become relationships. You can meet people who could introduce you to someone. You might start dating somebody and then they're like, hey, meet my friends. And somehow socializing, or your social relationships and your romantic relationships expand, right? The other thing that I would think about is that Pluto is still in your 7th house of relationships, making some changes. It's squaring your sun. So there's a sense of being like, could there be difficulties or power struggles, with men or with dating? Do I feel like I'm in control of things, or are people kind of challenging me? And do I feel like that sense of, being threatened in relationships with whether or not people will give me control? And you have Neptune in conjunction to your Venus. So there's this, am I ever going to find love? Or you do find people and then you think it looks like a good idea, and then you realize oh, that's not exactly what I thought, or they don't look like their user picture, or, they vanish. These things can happen with Venus-Neptune transits. When you see Saturn and the moon come into conjunction, that's when you're going to see much more seriousness in relationships. And ironically, it's going to happen while Neptune is there and the North Node is there, and then Saturn's going to hit your Venus, and it's going to be about karmic relationship situations in the spring of 2025. So in my opinion, much more of what's going on right now is about career. Much more of what's going on right now is also about trying to figure out what direction things are going in, making a decision potentially between two different paths, because your midheaven's at a 27. I think with like eclipses here and retrogrades here, it's been about being like, okay, how can I feel like I have much more sense of having stability in my professional life, or maybe, you know, throwing in the towel and doing something completely different than what I've always done and starting over. And this is going to be about feeling like you have more authority. And rather than feeling like you need authority in relationships, it's going to be about feeling like you have more control over where your career is going. And it can be very exciting because the eclipses and, you know, the retrograde and the North Node could be bringing you something new. I think with so many planets in the 10th house, there is this sense of wanting to be a leader or wanting to be productive or wanting to be successful. And I think with these transits that are happening in this next year, it's kind of saying to you, okay, if that's what you really want to do, then it's going to be about also being more assertive and kind of going after what you want, because that North Node and Aries energy is really kind of tapping in. You have Venus and the Moon on your midheaven. So do you work in education? Do you work with art and beauty? Do you do something in regards to, I mean, like Moon and Venus, especially exalted Venus on the midheaven, like working with women, working with nonprofits, doing some kind of work that's also kind of connected to like design or like photography. Do you do anything like that? Because that's really being like emphasized here, at least, you know, in this next year with some of the transits over these particular places. I feel like both relationships as well as career is all going to kind of come full circle for you right around spring of 2025. But it's based off of what you're actually initiating now and like focusing more on what's going on with work rather than what's going on with relationships. And it's challenging because Pluto square your sun is the sense of, am I getting what I need from other people? And I would say if you move away from that and if you focus more on, okay, but where is my career going? What am I doing? You're actually going to find a lot more happiness. And I think you're going to really expand the likelihood of the possibility of meeting somebody that you really like and that could really be a good relationship by getting out there and trying to find friends first, right? Uranus and Jupiter over your Saturn is saying, go and find good friends. People will either hook you up with people or you end up finding somebody that you really like. And it could be a relationship that can develop from a friendship, especially with that trine to Mars in Capricorn. You'll have 2 full moons in Capricorn. So the end of July and the end of June. Both of those times I would really pay attention because very likely you're going to find this is a time where there's some kind of real big focal points that are going on in regards to relationships or partnerships with other people. It can be people at work as well. But in your chart, you know, you have Saturn as the ruler of your 7th house and it's in the 11th. So it means that most likely you're going to make a friend or you're going to make a friend from work, or there's going to be some female friend from work because Venus is the dispositor who's going to say, let's go out, or like, let's go to this party, or I want you to meet somebody. And like, that's how you'll connect with someone. Could also mean that you're friends first, or it's somebody that you've been friends with for a long period of time because it's at 22. But your partner should have a combination of like Taurus, Capricorn, or Aquarius in their chart. They will have one of those signs is like their big 3 or all of them. And the more that you're socializing and kind of connecting with people, the much more likelihood that you're going to meet someone. And I would say meeting new people, diversifying your friends this year with Jupiter, Uranus in the 11th house. People who are into art or cooking or gardening or, you know, you might even meet people through, you know, like astrology groups, believe it or not, because Jupiter and Uranus are on your Saturn. You might meet other people who are also equally interested in astrology and you might have that in common. But I have a pretty good feeling about when Saturn's hitting your moon and your Venus that this is some big changes next year for you when it comes to, okay, am I in a relationship or not? Yes, I am. Okay, we're together. And Saturn always brings karmic relationships with a Venus conjunction. So if you have Venus exalted, it might go better for you in terms of relationships and also your career. And if you're not in these types of businesses that I'm discussing or kind of bringing up, not that there's anything wrong with customer service, but I do feel like you're going to be really interested in being able to do more. So it might be working for a different company. It might be something that's going to be more beauty, you know, metaphysical, spiritual, health, healing, non-profity, like these kinds of things, art related because you have Venus on your midheaven. So that's a pretty sweet aspect. Working with women or a female-based company or something that's going to allow you to do some kind of work, maybe more closer to home. It may even be that there's other interests that are coming up for you that you're kind of doing through home that's like connected to design or home property, real estate stuff that starts popping up for you and you're like, oh, I could do this. And it becomes much more of an interest, right? Anyway, I hope that's helpful in kind of giving you some insight in navigating these transits. But definitely see some relationship stuff happening for you, for sure. And we have Sarah. All right, Sarah, I've got you here on August 2nd, 79, 2:04 a.m. She says, I am being tempted by an ex situation. Okay, well, let's talk about it. So Taurus rising, moon in Scorpio, sun in Leo. So what's going on here? Well, the temptation is real. You've got transit Pluto in opposition to your Venus. So definitely some interesting stuff here. So first of all, relationships is always Mars. And you have Saturn, which is yet to square Mars. So that's good. That won't happen until next year. And you have Jupiter that's going to hover around your Mars as well. But really, I think Pluto in opposition to Venus is like that temptation of, ooh, do I want to go there? You know, Venus is in the 4th house, so it can represent the past. And you've also got Uranus and Jupiter opposing your moon Uranus. The question is has that person changed? And I'm not saying that because they're an ex. I'm saying that because Jupiter Uranus in your 1st house is not going to be tolerant of any bullshit. There's this sense of being like, I value my independence. Like, I'm really self-focused. Like, I'm in a good place, you know, and that's generally when exes come back. But I think that opposition to your moon is really changing the way in which you're communicating with other people, or whether or not you're really open to their ability to kind of sink their claws into you. Because moon Uranus in 7th means there can be this really strong psychic pull, or there can be this sense of that person being like really obsessive or kind of fixated with you. And I feel like all these planets that are going to swing through the 1st house over the next month or two is going to be about being independent, asserting yourself, having some sense of freedom, and literally opposing the will of other people, which can be strong when you have Scorpio planets in the 7th house who are used to getting a reaction out of you. So it's like things are going to be a little different. The other thing that I would think about is the fact that, you know, Mars rules your chart, or your 7th house. So you're going to see that Mars is going to come into Leo, and it's going to square Pluto, and it's going to square Venus. So that's going to be like a testing ground for being like, you know, this is or is not working for me. So you're going to see that in June, right around here. And then again, you're going to see a Mars retrograde, which is relationships. That's going to go into conjunction first with Jupiter in your 2nd. So that's going to be about somebody being like, no, I want this. Let's make this work in August. And then Mars is going to go into Leo, and it will retrograde over all your Leo stuff. Just food for thought, right? It doesn't really matter what happens this year. There can be a back and forth with somebody all year, and then you don't really kind of get it sorted out until the end of the year, and you're like, okay, are we doing this or not? And I cannot state this enough. People won't really understand when I probably do the video on, or when we start to see these aspects. But Mars in Leo is about drive, passion, you know, dedication. It's also about leadership. So it's about whether or not somebody's going to be taking the initiative to be like, okay, I'm going to do everything different than I did in the past. And it could mean that you're really waiting around to see until the end of the year that they do it. And then by then you could be like, too little, too late. Because it will oppose Pluto, which means you're going to be like, we're not seeing eye to eye. And because it's going to square your ascendant, it means that it's also going to be a situation where you're like, this may not feel pleasant. Do I want to get out of this? So knowing that that may potentially happen down the road, I would be really cautious about getting back with somebody personally. You do have Mars in opposition to Neptune, so you're no stranger to being in a relationship with somebody, things don't work, you guys don't talk, you go your separate ways, or there's some kind of disconnection. And then there can be a sense of them realizing what happened, and then they return, right? Like you have a really strong Cancer signature with all those planets in the 4th house. So you're used to kind of dealing with things from the past. But just because people have taken time to kind of process that and realize that and then come back, that doesn't necessarily mean you go back, right? You need to be seeing something really strong happening with your natal Mars for a relationship to really flourish. And nothing is really happening there right now, at least in my opinion. You know, Saturn will square it, but that's next year. The nodes will square it, but that's next year. You're going to see eclipse in the fall that will square it, but that's later this year. So for right now, I really love for like, you know, Taurus risings who have Scorpio placements for the next like month and a half, as all these planets go through your first house, you're like, yes, it's about me. It's about me, how I look, what I need, how I feel, my relationship to myself. And like, that's all going to bounce off of the 7th house, and people are going to be like wanting more, giving me more. Even if it's not your ex, it's going to be other people who are going to have an interest. They're going to see you and they're going to like approach you and they're going to want something. So my advice is, knowing that that's all going to be happening, like live your life for the next month. Like let people chase you. Let them try to win you over. Let them try to kind of pursue you. You don't really have to suss any of this out until later in the summer, and even then, probably later in the year. But I would be a little hesitant with all these planets in the first house to overly commit to someone, unless it's a situation where it's like, it's perfect. And I really think you need to go into it and be like, I'm a completely different person. And you're going to have to get to know me all over again. And like, you're going to have to do the work, because I'm not going back to whatever we had or whatever took place in the past. We're not doing that again. And it's very much about you right now. Jupiter, Uranus in the first house. With Pluto in opposition to Venus, I would be cautious about anything where you're not getting what you need. If you're not getting your needs met. And if somebody else is, in sticky situations, or if somebody is trying to get out of something, or they're saying, oh, I want to come back to you, but there's like another party involved, be very careful with that. And like, also people can get really obsessive and fixated on you with Pluto in opposition to Venus. They can start coming to work and being like, what's going on? What are you doing? What's happening? And like, they could be kind of getting involved in your relationship with other people at work, and they can get jealous and be like, why are you talking to that guy? What's going on here? What's happening there? Because Pluto is in your 10th house. So if you're saying that you're running into him or meeting him or seeing him through a conference or something, I feel like he's also possibly going to be seeing like, well, why is she not responding to me the way that she usually responds? Pluto will be opposing your Venus for the better part of the next year. So it's retrograding now, so you're going to get a breather. But then it's going to start coming back into an opposition with Venus in January, February, and it looks like it's going to be August through January of 2026. It's going to be for a while. Pluto transits last for about 2 years. And it's at a 2, so it's about stability and security. So the long and short of it is, because it's not just opposing your Venus, which is you, it's squaring your ascendant. It's like, no, we're not repeating the past. And there may even be a period where you're like, I'm not taking anybody from the past back. I'm not doing the past. That can come up as well. The positive, though, is that Saturn will trine Uranus, and it will also trine your moon. So that does tell me that through communication and like the willingness to like talk through things, relationships can get better. But also it can mean, in the 12th house, like, no, there's nothing to talk about. We're good here. So when you do deal with the past, if you realize that it's not going to work, having that communication and conveying like, hey, I'm good here, may need to be what happens to really kind of close that door and be like, I think we're good, But follow up, let us know what happens. Like I said, like you're going to interact with this person, you're going to look good, but you have to really make them kind of work for it, But let me know what happens. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me tonight. I appreciate it. I will be back here next Friday. We're going to be doing tarot. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Catch me back here on Sunday for astro weather. And check out my website if you guys want to book a personal reading with me. Click the links below at beyondtheveiltarot.com. You guys can check out my sessions and all my offerings, my calendars, and much, much more. You can also learn tarot and astrology with me if that's something that interests you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see all of you guys here very soon. Take care.